Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a
wow, Neil
tape
Armstrong.
delay and with all solar winds.
Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork.
You don't see the curvature of the earth. That stuff is flat.
Globebusters taking over. Bye bye moon man and rover. NASA so mediocre. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is. Globebusters taking over. Gotta ride this roller coaster. But the truth is getting closer. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is. Get the shovel for the spice hubble. Piecing up the puzzle. Need a burst your bubble. Evil gonna crumble, yeah? Sit down, be humble. Got the ball, you better fumble. You'll get mad, cause at this fight I'm Bob's your uncle.
And then they call me the liar. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable the pathetic techniques that they have to use to prove their heliocentric model.
Bob shot the president, Jeran got the evidence. Arrow slaying Jesuits and Zack is evident. That the earth electric and it's resonant. Your residence is happens and I hope you settle in like some sediment. If we so wrong, why they lying to discredit it? That's not too intelligent. That's a guy, not an in court, but we ain't really in the settlement. It's time to awaken from the pseudoscience sedatives.
Globebusters taking over. Bye bye moon man and rover. NASA so mediocre. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is. Globebusters taking over. Gotta ride this roller coaster. But the truth is getting closer. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is.
Inner World Productions.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
And welcome everybody to Globebusters. What is the Aether? It is another fantastic Sunday. It is noon or there, close to, 5 minutes past, not that bad. But welcome to the show, everybody. I am your co-host, Jeran from Jeranism, and we've got Bob here as well. Bob, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jeran, for having me. Thanks for actually hosting it today.
No problem.
Jeran put in the new version of OBS. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. And it's got all kinds of nifty little nice features on it. Like you can share individual windows now and the sound on them. And that's kind of nifty, but I haven't quite figured it all out yet. So I'm glad that you are hosting this today so we can have at least somewhat of a smooth show.
When things start working, I just stop updating.
Yeah, no doubt. I am an addict about that. I update everything that comes out. I have to have the update. That's just the way I kind of roll. But man, it causes me so much trouble.
All right, we've got our normal people here. We've got Awesome Wits in the house. Witsit, how's it going?
Hola. How's it going? Good here, just chilling. What's up with the familia?
Nice. Oh yeah, no image. Sorry, I see that now. I'm not paying attention. And we've also got Iru Landucci. Iru, from where are you at now?
I'm still in Switzerland.
Switzerland, okay.
Until tomorrow. Then I go to Barcelona because we have the big Flat Earth conference over there. I'm still here, man.
Is there anybody
surrounded by Jesuits and Freemasons and Davos and that kind of shits.
Are you the only person of color there, or is there others?
Well, the color. What type of color?
Brown.
Well, no, I came from Italian genetics, so I am not so brown as you think.
I was going to say Landucci is an Italian last name.
Yeah, exactly. I can keep the concept of human. Hue colors. I have all the rainbow colors, not LHTB, okay?
No. We know that. And we've got Zack in the house. Zack, what's up? You're muted.
It'll take him a second.
You're now.
There's always that.
Yeah,
there's always
the
that.
phone.
ever since I got too close to that Tesla coil with this thing, it has not been happy, this phone. I'm going to have to figure that out and remedy that here real soon. Yeah, because
you blew
it
a
used
hole
to
in the
run real
ether,
smooth.
man.
Yeah, I must have. Something, yeah.
And we got Cami here? No. I didn't see. No, I don't see her up there. Cami's in the house. She's in the chat, probably, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think she's on standby, but yeah, she will chime in if she has anything to say.
Sweet. And what are you showing here? Oh, we got our special guest. I'll let you go ahead and introduce him.
Okay, yeah. This gentleman, I came across him a while back, and he's in South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. And I really kind of like the way that he does his broadcast, kind of like we do. I mean, he offers his opinion, but he doesn't, try to force it down anybody's throat. And he is really very gracious and very good at just discussing his opinion. And he is also on the other side of the Aether issue from what Austin and I are. And that's not to say that Austin and I are exactly the same page. We're not. But that's okay, because there's much more to this whole Aether issue than I think anybody realizes. And that's kind of what I want to get cleared up today, right? Because there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And I really like Flatzoid's take on this. And so I thought I would bring him on and get his side of the story. So how are you doing today, Keith?
Hey, good to see you, Bob. Good to see everybody. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
Through. Yeah.
So okay. So anyway, you put out a couple of videos, the past couple of days, and I was interested in them because you were talking specifically about the Aether, right? Exploring Aether Part 1 and 2 are the ones that I'm talking about. And it was in watching those videos that what you revealed to me was what I think a lot of people are really misunderstanding about the luminiferous Aether. And, everybody seems to think that it has to be a physical thing. And it most certainly does not have to be a physical thing. But, that also depends on how you define physical, right? Does it interact with the physical? Oh, absolutely. Yes, it absolutely does. And we can prove that. We have several experiments that prove that throughout history. And I've always found it interesting because, in my take on the Aether, not only is it the medium for, propagating, manifestation and form, but is also the source of a lot of that. And I think a lot of that goes back to, like if you're looking at biblically when God when God spoke the world into existence, I believe this was done cymatically. And the Aether, which, believe it or not, is supposedly very, very dense. That's another thing that's very strange about the Aether, is it has an extremely high density. But so the universe responds by manifesting, our reality in this place that we're actually in. So this philosophy, this idea of the Aether has been around for 300 years at least. And we have had the best and the brightest minds in all of history that have built their electrical engineering and magnetic theories based on this luminiferous Aether. And it goes even further beyond that. Like I said, most people are of the opinion that if it's not physical, if you can't touch it, measure it, whatever, if you can't bean count it, then it doesn't exist. That's like saying, can you measure a thought? Can you measure love? Of course not. But are they tangible? Absolutely, they're very tangible. Unless your only definition of love is sex, which is, pretty limited in my opinion. But this entire world that we're based in is a manifestation from nothingness into what we're perceiving as our reality. And this is precisely what the Aether does in many, many forms. Like I said, the ancient Chinese and several other cultures also talk about something that's called the qi, right? Which is the body life force and the body energy. Well, they have been able to manifest very, very amazing things with the chi, and it's not all parlor tricks. Some of the stuff is absolutely amazing. You can watch them, dissolve tumors live, on ultrasound, and I mean there are some demonstrations that are absolutely inexplicable. Right? Could some of them be a joke, a hoax? Sure, they could. But in the research that I've done, I don't think so. I think a lot of this has a lot of legitimacy to it. I think that whether or not you believe in this type of manifestation from the non-physical to the physical is largely whether or not it actually works for you. But these are the things that I kind of want to talk about today. Because, when you think about 300 years worth of the greatest physicists, electrical engineers of our times, Maxwell, Planck, Heaviside. I'm not going to include Einstein in that, even though Einstein was a great believer in the ether. He was basically forced into dismissing it because he was the guy that was chosen to head up the new scientific paradigm, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. And I just want to kind of go around and get everybody's take, what they think about is going on here. And let's get a discussion going on this. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's let Witzig go first since he did a whole show on it this week.
Okay.
All right, yeah. So the way I look at it is that, like Bob said, him and I might not entirely agree on the way that I propose it, but not everything can be proven via science, right? But we know that certain things exist via logic. Similar to how we say the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is physical containment, but we cannot go touch it or verify it or bottle it up or anything like that. We just know that by antecedent it's there. We don't have to make any further claims. It's called a logical axiom. Same way we know that there exists a metaphysical realm. We have consciousness, intuition, love, necessary instinct to creation of the creator or intelligent design, etc. These are all logical axioms, not physical, rigid scientific experimentation. So that's that. So basically the way I look at it is it's a logical axiom that there exists some sort of background or medium that sustains electromagnetic phenomena, being as the alternative option is that electromagnetic phenomena is sustained within nothing. Seeing as how nothing cannot exist, something's there, right? On a very basic level, something sustains the energy. We have tons of observations that seem to show that light is already present, and what we call the speed of light is nothing more than us quantifying how quickly we see it. This can only be explained if there is something sustaining it as a background already present. We have something called magnetism, which cannot be explained in any of the current frameworks other than ether. Quantum mechanics derived from atomism says it's the exchange of virtual photons, which admittedly is not a real thing, it's just a mathematical fix, et cetera, et cetera. So I could go forever, but simply put, there seems to be two fundamental philosophical frameworks used to interpret phenomena. One is atomism, one is the ether. Atomism is philosophically bankrupt for many reasons. And it has evolved into quantum mechanics, in which they want to try to quantify everything. And from a materialistic worldview, say things such as if you cannot quantify it, it does not exist. So they have evolved into the lunacy of trying to quantify the immaterial as I can see it. And the other one is that there is an ether. And Tesla would describe it as, a background medium with tenuity beyond conception, meaning like a rarefied medium. So super, super, super thin, but simultaneously having lightweight, but seemingly having characteristics of high density and sensitive qualities. But anyway, simply put, it's like it's an energetic background that sustains electromagnetic phenomena. And yeah, we could go forever, but and then it seems like there's a vortex within it, explaining the drift that connects to the sky. So anyway, it's just a philosophical framework that can explain electricity, electrostatics, magnetism. The alternative is to throw our hands up and say, I don't know, but I want to count stuff that I can't count. So we're going to make up names of nonsense. So that's kind of the approach that I took with it. I show the nonsense that is quantum mechanics, that is atomic theory, that is electrons being 100 million times smaller than the atom and all this other nonsense. Then we go back and look at it And yeah, it's simply like electrical field theory fatherheads knew that it was here. And Tesla actually went as far as to say he had to treat it as a matter of fact to have any type of success scientifically with his experimentation. And yeah, I mean, that seems to speak for itself, as he was extremely successful and gave us the very electrical society that we have to this day. And it was thrown out because of a philosophical devotion to heliocentrism. And Michelson-Morley, with Michelson-Gale and many other observations, showed that if there was an ether with substantive qualities, a medium that a motion could be applied to, then the Earth could not be moving through it. So it was thrown out. Relativity replaced it. And as Einstein said, if Michelson-Morley had not brought us into great embarrassment, then no one would have even halfway considered relativity as a halfway redemption. And so then they attributed constant speed to light and blah, 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 trying to explain it away. So there you go. It's like a brief little summary to me. If you look at the history of it, I think it's important to understand it. Since when did flat earthers all of a sudden not look into the truth or the historical patterns of them hiding things to us, lying to us? And yeah, it seems to be a reoccurring theme that they reify little physical spheres conceptually with math, and reify that, apply it to reality because they're materialist, and it just simply isn't the case. It's logically bankrupt and not viable. Anyone that actually looks into all the phenomena that we're discussing, they will find out quickly there doesn't really seem to be any other logically viable alternative. And yeah, there's a little brief summary. I could go forever as I've been talking about it so much, but yeah, there you go.
Well, it's a deep subject. It really is. And it is not without substance, not by any means. Because like I said, in order to make a lot of these theories work, and let's face it, we have had broadcasting over electromagnetic waves for well over a century now. And before that, before we understood, the fine tuning of electromagnetic waves and how to modulate them, we understood that we could make them be a spark gap type of transmitters, which were extremely wide bandwidth type of transmitters. But so all of electrical engineering, and RF engineering, this, by the way, is what I did for a living for years and years and years, is based on this EM type of phenomenon. And it's interesting because, mainstream science will tell you they don't really know what it is, they don't really know what causes magnetism. They don't really know what electricity is, so many things like that. And, I have to agree with that. So that's why you have to go back and start looking at the sources of, what science discovered before Einstein came along and completely jerked the rug out from underneath the ether argument, right? So, that's the way I see it. And this is a subject that deserves a lot of investigation. And it should never be, nobody should ever be made to feel like they're an embarrassment to flat Earth because they're looking into it. This is something that if it's important to you, then flesh it out. But I will say one thing, whether the ether exists or not is ultimately irrelevant. The Earth is flat. We know that. We have a mountain of other evidence. The ether comes up as a subject of, well, what exactly is this place? And that's kind of where, I have decidedly taken Globebusters to try and understand what this creation, what this realm actually is. And so, yes, is there going to be a lot of speculation? You bet there is, but it is not without foundation, not by any means whatsoever. So, Zack, you have been studying this for a little bit of time now. What do you think is going on with the ether?
Well, if you look at it throughout history, they said Einstein did away with it, but I mean, they have to keep coming back to it, even in quantum mechanics, where they're doing all this crazy stuff with these accelerators. What was it, 1985 or 1986? They came up with, hey, we discovered this background field and we call it the Higgs field.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're saying, and every Nobel laureate now for I don't know how many, there's so many of them that come out and say, yes, the ether has to be there. It's no different than saying that we have a container.
That's right.
We can't go up there and measure it and test it and put our hand on it, but it has to be there.
But we have all kinds of evidence that it's there, don't we? We have lots of evidence that it's there.
Yeah,
Same thing
lots
with
of
the
evidence
ether.
that says the exact same thing with the ether. If you can send an electromagnetic pulse or a field or a wave into a vacuum and light up a light, then there's some medium there that we are not seeing, that we can't sense yet, that this is propagating through. That's the same thing as saying we have to have it. To have gas pressure, we have to have this. Well, to do this, to send this magnetic wave, we have to have this, some type of medium. And yeah, I believe it has to be there. It's one of those antecedents, you know.
Yeah.
It's just how it works.
Yeah,
now, I was thinking about this a lot, and about the Bible. I was going back to Genesis, and I'm not the Bible guy, but it talks about God spoke all of this into existence. And that's resonance. That's frequency. Everything resonates and has a frequency. Everything. Every material here has its own vibration.
And form.
And it seemed like before all of this, there had to be, you know, something. They say God created or separated the waters from the waters. Well, he made air right there. So ether, I believe, was the original state. It was the original state of matter. Now, when you put electricity and magnetism into it, and these certain frequencies and vibrations and resonate it just right, you can turn that ether into anything that we see here. That's what it's made of, is of this one element, just at different vibrations, different frequencies. I really want to start studying this, like actually measuring the vibration of that, you know, tree out there and that plant over there. But it's, I'm running into a lot of roadblocks, and I bet there's a really good reason why.
Yeah, exactly. And let's not forget, guys, it is the mainstream position that the mainstream desperately wants to dismiss any notion of the ether, because unless they did that, then all these experiments showing non-motion would have held, right, with interferometry. And they couldn't come up with excuses fast enough to try and explain that away, right? So that, you know, for most truthers, most of us know that if the establishment is pushing one way, or if they're saying something, you know, isn't true or is bad or wrong, then the rest of us know pretty much that the opposite is true, right? So that in and of itself tells me that there's much more to the ether, especially when it comes to free energy and manifestation and the nature of creation, than they're leading us on to believe. And like I said, to think anybody that says that we can't measure it and we can't detect it, sorry guys, you're wrong. We most certainly can measure it. We most certainly can detect it. We have 21st century technology, 20th and 19th century technology based on laser interferometry, based on the ether, and it all works. It all works perfectly. So now, one thing is that I don't understand is why people are claiming that the ether has to be something that's physical. And, you know, I contend that there are parts of it that are physical, but people are saying, well, no, it has to be physical. Why does it have to be physical? You know, again, I'd really like to understand that. And maybe, you know, maybe Keith will be able to understand that or be able to explain that to us a little bit. So, Keith, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of your overview, since you're going to be kind of on the opposition side.
Oh, thanks, Bob. Yeah, like I said, I actually am happy I could come on, because then I can actually hear your guys' side of the story, because I don't really get to hear it that much. So, like you can see, when I first got into Florida, this was the first thing I actually started researching was the ether. I mean, it wasn't really, how can I put it, researched that much. I mean, it was like 7-8 years ago, and this, the first thing you actually come into is you need a replacement for gravity, quote unquote. And I came across the ether argument. So I did the research on it, and this is what led me to all these things like the Sagnet effect and, you know, with resonance and cymatics and things. And then while just looking into it after a while, I just came to a kind of a dead end where I couldn't put a puzzle together, how can I put it, where one and one together to say I can definitely prove that the ether exists, as a physical medium, because you literally need that medium for it to propagate through, because that's what the ether is said to be. But if you, some people have the belief that the ether is just spiritual, which I 100% agree, because if I have to concede and say, okay, the ether would exist, I would say it's God's presence, because it's omnipotent, is everywhere. So it would be his presence. So you cannot get rid of anything. It's the same as gas. There's nowhere in life where you have no gas. And no matter how big the vacuum is, there's gas around somewhere. There has to be gas. So you could sort of say the gas could even be the ether, because there's pressure. But yeah, everybody has their own interpretation of what it is. So for some people, I would say it's got a religious and a spiritual value to it. And some people, it's got a more of a, I needed to replace the belief I've had kind of thing. For me, I just came to dead and see I couldn't prove it to myself to be physical. And so I just pushed it aside as, if it does exist, it would just have to be a spiritual thing.
Okay.
That's
So go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to say a couple things. So just to really drive home the point of the container, right? They're trying to say that is, people are trying to say that isn't analogous because you can, physically see gas pressure, blah, 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 blah. The point is that we can't actually go and touch the container. We can't physically verify the Earth's container. We propose that in the form of a logical axiom, being that the necessary antecedent to gas pressure is physical containment. So what this means is, if you can propose a true dichotomy, meaning there's only two options, and you can show that one isn't viable, you have logically proven your premise. There's design and order on the Earth. We have two options. Either it was designed and placed in order, or it was not. Well, the second one isn't available logically, so it is designed. Okay, the same thing with the container. Either there is a container or there isn't a container. Well, there has to be a container. We have gas pressure. Same thing with the ether. Either something sustains the electromagnetic phenomena, or it is sustained within nothing. Either there is a medium or there is no medium. It does not have to be physical in the sense of in the material world, though, right? And you cannot quantify the immaterial, and you cannot physically verify via scientific manipulation the immaterial. But there is no other viable framework. It's either something or nothing. If you claim that's a false dichotomy, you have to offer a third option. So on a very rudimentary level, right, there's something or nothing. And if you claim there's nothing, well, nothing cannot exist. So that's just logically bankrupt. So just logically on its face right here, we have to acknowledge something's there. Then we have consciousness, right? Now, consciousness is not material, but it interacts with the physical world. What that means is we have immaterial phenomena that we know exist, right? Love, intuition, dreams, consciousness. We know these things exist and that they interact with the physical world. What that means is there's an intermediary between immaterial and the material world, right? And then in addition, we have to look at phenomena. What a lot of people are doing on the other side is they are making claims about light. The quantum theory of light came from Einstein, okay? And they claim it's this little discrete chunk or quanta of information or energy, a packet of energy, okay? And they claim that it travels from point A to point B, and special relativity said that it has a constant speed. It's all built upon this assumption. Now, we look at stuff like the double slit, and if light is in fact what Einstein claimed that it is, then a single photon has to go through a single slit and create a wave interference pattern by colliding with itself. Then single photon has to go through two slits simultaneously and then collide with itself.
Where does that happen in nature?
Sorry. The single slit, it's simply one photon shot through. And it's got to do with so it splits because you have a nova. So it could go through one or the other. It doesn't simply go through at the same time. It just chooses a path. But yeah, this has all got to go back to the ontological primitives. You need a creator to have the design. So it falls under spirituality as well.
Okay, but they're not making spiritual claims when they make claims about the photon. They're claiming that that is science. Now, we have people that are running around bashing flat earthers for discussing the ether because it can't be scientifically proven, claiming it's pseudoscience, which I have been very particular as the way I presented it. It isn't science as in natural science. But then they're claiming claims about a photon. Now, they claim that a single photon goes through 2 slits simultaneously and then collides with itself, right? Because that's the only way you can get an interference pattern. This is why they claim that it is a wave-particle duality. Now, they wanted to verify this, so they went to go detect it to find out what's going on. How can one single photon go through 2 slits? Now, of course, they can't actually verify it's a single photon. That's just complete nonsense. Admittedly, it's just a mathematical equation. They think that they've lowered the probability enough that only one would go through it. There is literally no verification, but we'll set that aside. They claim that 2 slits have 1 photon go through it simultaneously and collide with itself. And if that's not the case, we're going to put a detector here to see what's going on. And when we observe it, the wave interference pattern collapses. So it's like the photon knows that we observed it. Then we put it behind the slits, and it still collapses, like it still knows that we observed it. Then we're going to put a crystal in front of it, reify the photon for the 400th time, say it splits up into 2 photons, and it still knows that we observed it. And we're going to make sure we don't know which one that we're going to observe or if we're going to observe it, but it then reads our minds and knows we're going to observe it before we observe it. Then we're going to split the photons, send them. This is top-level science. This is literally what it is. Then we're going to split the 2 photons into 2 different directions. One's going to hit a detector, one's going to hit the photographic plate, but it'll hit the detector after the plate. But still, there's no wave interference pattern. It's as if the photon knew we were going to observe it and then transcended time and altered events that have already happened. This is the current event that they claim. Now, they have proposed a false dichotomy that light must be a wave or a particle or both a wave and a particle. So the primary argument has come down to people saying you have to explain how light's a wave and it's propagating from point A to point B in a medium, even then it's giving a discrete chunk. That's a false dichotomy. Light is neither a wave nor a particle. Waves are not things. They're types of movement in a medium. No one's claiming that light is a wave. Ether does not claim that. It's a misinterpretation of even what it means from back in the day, but no one's claiming this. It's just that light's already there because it is the background itself. It oscillates or vibrates, gets excited, and then we perceive light, but it is not ever physically traveling. So what it comes down to is there are people, now this is, you can choose to disagree and basically praise the photon as a god and say that it can transcend time and it's sentient and all this nonsense, okay? But that is not science. That is not scientifically provable. That's a reification fallacy on steroids, and it comes from Albert Einstein. So my point, I wanted to make sure I got this out. You cannot go around critiquing people, bashing people, right? Telling they're an embarrassment to flat Earth, and you shouldn't be talking about this because you can't scientifically prove it, blah, blah, blah. And then simultaneously, out of the other side of your mouth, claim that light is a physical photon that travels from point A to point B. And then when called out on it, say, oh, never mind, I'm not claiming it travels, even though you do claim it goes through a slit, which is travel. And if you claim it's not traveling or you're not claiming that, can you tell me how a physical photon is what light is, but it doesn't travel? And then can you tell me how light could be instant if it's a physical photon? But if it is an ether, then it can explain the double slit perfectly because the light is already there. And there's not a wave going through it, as in from point A to point B. The light's already there. It just shakes, it vibrates, it oscillates, perturbates, and then that part of the plate where you get your reading is just the one part that matter is intersecting with that part of the medium. That's it. It's already there. It's not. Now they say, oh, it can't do that because it'd be a wave. It'd keep hitting it like waves crashing on a beach. That's because they're having a false presupposition that it's a literal wave going from point A to point B. So it's a very rudimentary misunderstanding of the phenomenon in entirety, the ether postulation in entirety, and an imposed false dichotomy combined with a reification fallacy of a sentient photon that's basically God. Now, if you're going to want to believe that, that's cool. If you don't want to actually apply critical thinking and understand that's a false dichotomy and that's not what a wave is, because waves aren't things, you want to keep saying it, whatever. But if you want to claim that that's science, the definition of science is that which falsely masquerades as science. So that would be pseudoscience. As we're explaining, well, the ether's immaterial, so you can't actually scientifically manipulate it and independently verify it, right? It's a logical framework. So only one person's guilty of pseudoscience. There will be no rebuttals to any of these things other than misunderstandings of the double slit and reifications of the photons on steroids. And the ironic part is, the heliocentric model requires the speed of light. It requires it. Special relativity has a constant speed of light, and all these distances to these made-up stories of fairy tales in space have to have the speed of light. So literally defending the photon, which is pseudoscience, is defending Einstein's quantum theory of light, and it's defending relativity, it's defending the heliocentric model, and the ether was not even entertained in any of these interpretations of the double slit for 200 years. because that would mean that the ether proved the Earth wasn't spinning. This is all objective. And now quantum is crawling back, talking about quantum foam, quantum this, superposition, quantum entanglement, wave particle duality, but the wave is just a mathematical function. It's insane. So what it comes down to, it's a whole bunch of misconceptions. And if anyone has been keeping up at all, I've been getting like bashed for this, right? But I will say, if you can't let someone get your full point out, you can't let them actually say your argument, then there's probably a reason for that, right? And if you have to straw man the position, that's ridiculous, bro, right? And everyone knows that's what Globers do, right? Funding mute you, don't let you get the position out, straw man you. If you're still claiming that it's either wave or particle, that's called a false dichotomy, and you simply don't even understand what the ether is. You simply literally are not even on first base yet. And so I just want to throw that out there just so everyone understands. It's important to at least pump the brakes if you're maybe in over your head or haven't fully looked at it. You should not ridicule other people. We're not in a cult. We broke out of a cult. We are free thinkers that don't have to have any type of script. And that's I really want to throw that out in the ether, which is no one tells you what to think, and don't let anyone do it. Don't let them intimidate you. Certainly when they have to use dishonest tactics or they misrepresent the argument and then personally berate you, insult you, and don't let you speak. You don't have to listen to that. And that's what the true embarrassment of flat Earth is anyone that's trying to do anything like that and, basically try to get clicks off of drama. So that's
J-Trig. That's J-Trig, that kind of techniques. But go ahead, Keith.
Sorry. So I was just trying to say, Austin, I think you got a bit mixed up with the double slits. It's not trying to hit into each other. It's simply seen as one cut off the quanta of light. So yes, they would say it travels, which I do not agree because I do not agree light travels. But the double slit is simply there to show, let's take an example of two tunnels. And you are standing at the one end of those two tunnels. Which the car would have to go through any of the tunnel, the left or the right. You have to have somebody knowing it's to stand there to actually know the car has gone through the tunnel. The information is there, but it cannot be resolved unless you have a knower. That's what the double slit's about. That's why it's got one, as they say, one photon of light, a quanta, moving as one, and it chooses which side to go through. You don't know which side it goes through until it hits the plate. So I'm just saying it's not made splitting into two or anything. It's just that's how they interpret it.
You know what, Keith? In the first time I ever saw the double slit experiment it was brought out in What the Bleep Do We Know? And basically, when they explained it, the inference was basically that we were in a simulation because the simulation itself was then taking on an intelligence, realizing that it was being examined at the quantum level and was compensating for it, right? So now we've gone from pure science to saying that, well, the simulation itself is conscious, right? Now, is that true? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Are we in a simulation? We could be. I haven't been able to eliminate that. But
I'm sorry, bro, but that is not true. Okay, for one, if your tunnel analogy is begging the question that it travels, but again, they claim they shoot one photon and then they get a wave interference pattern. Okay, so how do you get a wave interference pattern with two slits and one photon? They say that the photon could be going through both slits at the same time and colliding with itself because it is a wave and a particle. It acts as both a wave and as a particle. Like if you have a rock.
Superposition.
Exactly. If you have it's superposition that the photons in both slits at the same time.
That's what quantum is. They're giving all the variables at the same time. It means it could be this, it could be that. You don't know until the data has revealed itself. So it's just how can I, like I was saying with the car and the two splits, it could be going either way. You don't know. The only way you're going to know is if you're at the end of the tunnel actually receiving that data. Otherwise, it will still be there. You're just not going to know. That's what quantum is actually.
How does one photon give you a wave interference pattern? That's the question.
Interferometry. Well, the wave pattern actually doesn't come from that. It's simply just a photon going through the left or the right, hitting the plate. It's got nothing to do with the wave pattern.
But yet there's a resultant wave pattern. Where is it coming from?
like I said, I don't make claims on it being traveling or anything, or even waves.
Okay.
I don't agree that it travels 100%. Like I agree with Austin. I told him today, which I believe light is everywhere. It's just at different frequencies. Now, if they're shooting a photon, you could say, I'm not saying they do, they're just simply cutting off that frequency contour, and that data is resolved then at the end of the plate. So if that gives it a pattern of a diffraction pattern, I don't know how that would happen because I can't make a claim about that. I'm not actually for photons, as you know.
Let me ask you something, Keith. Do you believe that the double slit experiment passes through the requirements of the scientific method?
Not really. Like I said, it also comes down to a belief system. It's the same.
I agree with that totally.
They do demonstrations on it, but you have to make a structural belief on, I mean, where's the IV and DV to it? There is no. You have to just have multiple explanations on it happening. Can you prove that's the reason? I don't really think scientifically.
I don't think so either. So let me throw something else in here just for you to contemplate, right? And I've said this before, and I just want people to think about this for a little bit. We know as flat earthers that this place did not happen as a matter of random fuckery, right? It is absolutely designed. It is absolutely constructed. There is intelligent design, intelligent thought. Everything about this creation is intelligence, right? So if that is true, then you have to ask yourself, first of all, what's step one of the scientific method? It is to observe a natural phenomenon, yes?
Correct.
Okay. So what is natural? If this is a construct, if this is a manufactured construct, whether it was brought about by Yahweh or Enki or whoever built this place, then what do we then define natural as? And because to me, it sounds to me like it's not natural at all. If it's a total intellectually and intelligently designed construct, then what is natural? Natural doesn't even apply. It's artificial by definition, right? So that, that's one of the problems that I've had with the scientific method, right? You can just sit there and put whatever you seem to want to in that category of what's natural and what isn't, and nobody's ever really looked at, well, what is natural, right? So it's just something to think about, and I think that's a big flaw in the scientific method.
I'm really trying to figure out this double slit thing, okay? I'm sitting here reading it again. It says that a single photon will result in an interference pattern. So I'm asking, now what they say is they don't know for sure what's going on because they can't detect it, but that it could be going through both slits simultaneously. Now I'm asking, for one, that obviously makes no sense. That's logically bankrupt. One photon can't go through two slits at the same time. They call it superposition. Now I'm asking, if light is a photon, how does a single photon create a wave interference pattern? Right? That's the question, and no one wants to address it. They just want to say wave function is math. In addition to the science thing, that's called empiricism, which is that all knowledge can only come from senses and scientific experimentation, which is a philosophy, and you couldn't even know to say that or know what knowledge is or have knowledge if that was true, because that's a philosophy of the mind. But I'm trying to understand, how does a single photon create a wave interference pattern? This is why it's been considered such a conundrum, right? And no one ever answers the question. No one ever answers.
Yeah, because, I mean, you can't actually call it a photon and call it a wave at the same time. I mean, if you're going to have it a wave function, don't you think there's have to be some kind of medium that's giving the wave, like you would think, like you guys would say the ether, in other words, because it's a propagation. It's like water. If you're going to hit the water, it's going to have a ripple, and that would give a diffraction pattern. That would be the wave function.
Right.
But I mean, if you have a single droplet, how are you going to have that wave function?
And the analogy doesn't work in our mind, because we think about it like, if I throw a rock at the beginning of a lake, we watch the ripple go across the lake. That's not what light does, though. It's like if you looked at a lake and then there was an earthquake. Okay? The whole lake is shaking. Light is instant. We don't have a speed of light. we don't have a one-way speed of light. We have a two-way speed of light. We've got a rate of induction, which is how quickly we perceive that vibration. They're saying it can't be a wave because there's a single chunk that hits the plate, which is a reification fallacy of travel. But it's just that's where that part of the medium is. It's not just lapping on it, hitting it over and over like a wave, a literal wave going through water would. It is a lake, and then an earthquake happens. And again, though, you can't just say, well, the wave function is just math. That's a non sequitur when we're asking, how does a single photon give you a wave interference pattern in the first place? And then they're saying that when you look at it, it decides to stop being having a wave function because you looked at it, because it's sentient and knows you looked at it. And then it'll even transcend time and alter events that have happened. This is the lunacy that the devotion to special relativity and heliocentrism has resulted in. The irony of people claiming that the ether is needed for relativity and that stupid flat earthers are proposing the second version of space-time and the second version of gravity. And ironically, they're actually defending the worldview of special relativity and materialism and heliocentrism by claiming light is a photon, to the point that they'll claim that it's sentient and knows you're trying to look at it before you look at it. This is objectively what it is, because I looked into it in depth. They claim that a single photon can go through two slits simultaneously with superposition and then quote-unquote collide with itself. Okay, so it's debunked. Now, the ether can explain the double slit effortlessly. Every time you use a detector, that's electronic manipulation. You don't go take a picture like an Instagram post of the photon. That's not what happens. They reify the electron, says it interacts with the photon, gives you a reading via contrast on a plate. Okay? Now, the question is, obviously, every time you do that electronic manipulation, you're creating another ripple, if you will, another disturbance in the medium, so it throws off the initial disturbance, the pattern that was the light. That's why you keep messing with it, because you keep detecting it with electronics, right? Now, so the ether perfectly explains it. So why hasn't modern science even entertained that? Because if there's an ether, then the Earth cannot be spinning. You not see the irony of this entire situation? That is just one part of it. But the same people going around bashing everyone for this are promoting the photon part of it, which is from relativity. Quantum theory of light is literally from Einstein.
But you would agree that most technology today is built on the understanding of quantum mechanics. Even your computer and your phone is based on that.
Right. That's like when a Glober tells me, if you don't believe in gravity, you can't use your cell phone because it has an accelerometer in it. Well,
good point.
Yeah. There's downward acceleration. We don't dispute the phenomena. We dispute your claimed cause. And then, coming up with a model to quantify phenomena that we see and then using it to replicate for technology is cool and all. But that's just begging the question. And reification fallacy, it doesn't prove it.
Yeah, and at least in our model, Keith, you can demonstrate this. You can demonstrate the downward vector, and we can manipulate it as well. Can we do it within the strict parameters as a scientific method? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, because that's open to interpretation. But one thing we have proven beyond any doubt whatsoever is that we can change the weight of objects, and and assuming what is causing that is the gravity. Now we know it's not gravity, because gravity in their mind is either bendage of space-time or mass attracting mass. It's neither. It is an electrical phenomenon which is demonstratable every day of the week and has been since electronics was ever even thought of, through a simple circuit called the Gaussian surface, which is basically like two capacitor plates, and then that generates an equipotential static electric field, which we have right here on plain Earth. We can demonstrate it in the lab. We've demonstrated it on camera. It's real, right? It's far more real than this nonsense about, how gravity supposedly works. So,
So I just want to find out, do you guys say that it's a dielectric, or is it, what kind of magnetism are you guys putting towards this?
We're not putting magnetism.
Yeah,
it's electrostatic.
No magnetism. Yeah, all electrostatic. A dielectric is simply an insulator. It's something that you put between two charged surfaces that they stop it from the electricity striking, stop it from having that discharge. That's all a dielectric. It can be air,
It's a
it
high
can be
impedance
pure
medium.
water is the greatest dielectric.
Because because water is diamagnetic, so that means it repels.
Well, technically, nothing
Yeah,
repels in
but
a
this
track.
is electrostatic. This isn't magnetic. There is a magnetic field here that we can measure, but the electrostatic field and the magnetic field are two different beasts.
And they operate
It's kind of
differently.
like electricity running through a wire. You know, the right-hand rule, you go from positive to negative. Well, your thumb points towards the negative from the positive. So your thumb is pointing towards the positive, and then the magnetic field goes around that in a circle. So one's going around in a circle, kind of like the ether is moving, and then the other one is just going straight through and down. The electricity is flowing through.
So it creates a magnetic field.
It does during the current flow process, yes. And in fact, one leads to another. If you have a magnetic field and you induce that magnetic field across a conductor like a copper wire, it will then introduce an electrostatic or a voltage or a current flow in that wire. Conversely, if you have an electric current that is running through a wire, and what it will do then is it will then create a magnetic field around that wire. In other words, there are two separate things that are absolutely 100% linked at the hip, and we describe that as a modality of the ether as to how it is being manipulated, right? There's no doubt that they're related. There can be no dispute that they're related. And science has known this for hundreds of years.
Well, even quantum mechanics claims so we're telling you that electrostatics and magnetism are different versions of the same thing, modalities of the same thing, right? They're just different versions of it, like ice and water, right? But quantum mechanics says, yeah, exactly. Quantum mechanics says they're the same thing too. It says that electrostatics is the exchange of virtual photons, and it says that magnetism is the exchange of virtual photons. So either you're going to say, I don't want to talk about magnetism, the most prominent phenomena in all the world. I can't explain it, but I know you're wrong about it. Or you're going to claim virtual photons, which are admittedly, Richard Feynman said, just an abstraction, not the input or output of any experiment ever done. Their existence is questionable at best, and it's just a concept used to make the equations balance out. These are the two options we have.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to find out is if you guys are saying it's inducing a magnetic field, then you're making it into a magnetic field. Then diamagnetism falls apart. That means it shows it will repel. So some things like ferromagnetism or paramagnetism.
What are you talking about? What do you mean it falls apart? What would repel?
Because diamagnetism repels.
Okay, so what is it we're repelling? What are we repelling?
Like water, for instance, you guys would think that
that's not in dispute.
The field is going to have a magnetic field to affect the water, which is pulling. Well, is it pushing down or pulling down the water on Earth?
It's pushing it down.
There's a downward electric pressure on the Earth. Yeah.
So then it would be diamagnetic towards the water. But then, what does that
have to do? I'm totally missing your point, man.
I'm trying to understand because you said it's got Gaussian plate, so you got a positive and a negative, obviously. So if it's going to have diamagnetic field, which isn't, it's based on the induced field, it's going to repel. It's going to repel the water.
But why are you saying diamagnetic? It's an electrostatic field. So all matter is intrinsically electrostatic and.
Yeah, but by diamagnetic field comes from an electrostatic magnetic field. That's what it comes from.
Okay, but we have negative charge on the surface.
Types of magnetic fields.
We have negative charge on the surface. We have positive charge going up, exponential increase, 100 volts per meter above that. We have positive charge and we have negative charge.
And they will naturally attract each other.
Exactly. We have an intrinsic up and down set by this downward current that results in a downward electric pressure. All matter that exists is electrostatic. Anything that falls is electrostatic. So if we want to try to science it, we'll manipulate the variable of electrostatics to see if it causes acceleration downward or upward, and we can make things float with electrostatics. proving that it does in fact affect cause the effect of downward acceleration, as does density. So we can just prove it, and it's everywhere. So
you can change the frequency of the field to make it float.
Yeah, well, you can change the charge of the matter and make it float.
Oh, you've never seen that little demonstration?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay.
That's why I'm trying to understand how you guys get around the diamagnetic pole, because that means it doesn't have any.
Because first of all,
a diamagnetic pole. What do you mean a diamagnetic pole?
Yeah, where's the diamagnetic pole?
Yeah, where does this come into play? This doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't have permanent dipoles. It's absent when it comes to diamagnetic materials. That's the problem.
What's absent?
What? Come on, dude.
All matter that exists is electrostatic, dude. Whether it's diamagnetic or not, the matter is held together.
Everything holds an electrostatic charge. Everything has a magnetic charge. It's either ferro, paro, or diamagnetic. Everything. Now, the only one that's noticeable and strong is the ferromagnetic. That's the one where the magnets snap together. But like diamagnetic material and what is it? Para and paramagnetic. One repulses and one pulls, but it's very weak. And if you actually look at the magnetic field maps of Earth and then look at the tide maps, it's really eerie how much they line up. I can share that. I'll drop that in the chat right here.
Awesome. Yeah, no, because I'm just saying the diamagnetic field lines, the field bends slightly away from the material, where the paramagnetic field lines, it bends towards the material.
Okay, so are you asking which one the Earth is? Like, what exactly are you asking? Because
which one do you guys? Because the thing is, you have the different type of materials act differently to different magnetic fields. So,
okay, but we're talking about an electrostatic field on the Earth. Electrostatic field.
Keith, I don't think you understand the difference. And see, and I'm not trying to insult you or anything, but this is a problem that a lot of people have, is they do not understand the most basic of electric principles. Okay, it is very clear to me that you don't understand the difference between diamagnetic, paramagnetic, and electrostatic and electromagnetic. And that's a problem. That's something that you really have to understand to be able to comprehend what we're saying here. And I'm more than happy to explain it to you. I really am. But you keep going on and you keep talking about how, this diamagnetic and repulsion, and I'm not even sure what you're talking about, how that relates to the ether. It is non sequitur. You're not putting the pieces together.
Yeah, we're talking about the ether, a background medium, right? And we're talking about how we have the phenomena of magnetism and electrostatics, and neither one of them can be explained without an etheric background. Like quantum mechanics says it's virtual photons. They just made it up because it doesn't work, right? So it's simple, but like magnetism, it can be explained within ether. And we can get technical. We found out that these people that are going around bashing people that talk about the ether are not ready for the technical aspect of, well, it's a conjugate geometric expression of centrifugal divergence and centripetal convergence, right? And the dielectricity is the ether at rest, as the magnetism is the ether in motion. It's actually dielectric dissipation, and everything is simply trying to go back to the counter space etheric realm that is the non-manifest pure potential. Because that's just word salad, right? That's just word salad because they don't know it yet. But it's okay. We had to learn it. We all have to learn things.
So yeah, to say it in real simple terms, ether is the first thing. That was the first, and Mother Nature is trying to return everything. That's what entropy is, pressure mediation, whatever you want to call it, high potential to low potential, is trying to equalize out all the charges here in this realm. Now, if that happened, then everything might revert back to ether. But us living stops that from happening. Us breathing, the trees breathing, us moving around, we're tossing around electricity like it's wild. If you could see the electric field coming off your fingertips, you'd be amazed at what's really going on around us. It's a living, breathing thing. Yeah, this electric field. It's wild.
I'm just trying to visualize how the fields would work if you based on your Gaussian place. That's all. So yeah, you guys can say I don't understand or anything.
Okay.
But
No,
I
yeah,
mean,
it took me a long time to understand this stuff, man. A long time.
It's not an easy concept to grasp. And like I said, we're not bashing you at all, because many people have this problem. I mean, this is why there are higher learning institutions, and not everything they teach is wrong. You know, they teach you in a way that you will interpret it the way they want you to, but it certainly is not that they're wrong by any means. And in fact, we have built a lot of technology based on this very premise, right? The ether for the last 300 years has been at the bottom basement of that. Some people will claim that quantum mechanics is the heart and soul of the semiconductor energy. That is just stupid. That is not true at all, because the semiconductor industry came from, basically it's a change of modality from diode tubes, triode tubes, pentode, tetrode. You can recreate a modern day computer. It won't be as fast by any means, but using the same logic that the diodes and triodes, pentodes and tetrodes can give you, and you can create that very same functioning computer out of tubes that you can out of semiconductors. Therefore, semiconductors have nothing to do with quantum mechanics. It's just an extension.
Yeah, I will say this, dude. I think we all respect you for coming on here and having like a respectful conversation, right? And that's beautiful. And it's also always beautiful to make sure you fully understand it and don't just believe one way or anything. I just think you're putting the cart before the horse in a way, because we just got to get the fundamentals right. Okay, like there's a background medium. Okay, there's pure potential energy there. We have energy manifest in the physical world. It comes from there. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. That's the first law, right? Well, that means it can only be transformed or transferred. So where does it come from, right? These are the questions that quantum mechanics cannot answer, and that's what we're discussing. That's a logically bankrupt framework based on the need to keep the heliocentric model alive and do away with the ether. So we're just trying to. I think you need to, like, instead of going all the way to the end and being like, exactly how does all the intricacies of the etheric field modalities work, right? You need to understand the basics. And so what we're saying, for example, with light is not a physical photon traveling. It's already there. It's already there. That's what the ether says. Because the light is the ether. It's already there. It's just a version of the ether. Like we discussed earlier, there's not a square inch on the entire earth that doesn't have light, right? Just because you don't see light doesn't mean light's not there. There's background radiation on every square inch. If you go to the darkest cave in the world, if you go to the bottom of the ocean, there's always light, okay? Now what we do when we see light is we introduce an additional introduction of energy, and it creates a disturbance. So now part of that spectrum becomes visible. You see what I'm saying? So we're saying the light's already there. Now that's a viable framework that can explain the double slit, that can explain the so-called superposition, that can explain all these things, right? So that's the first step. We see, okay, well, the physical photon model cannot explain phenomena. The ether can. That's what this whole discussion is which one's viable. Only one's viable. And it was thrown away, and it's still thrown away. I talked to a quantum physicist a couple months ago. He straight up told me, most of the people I work with know there's an ether. But it's like, you can't say that word. It's the bad word. We all know there has to be one because we can't explain anything. So that's what we're trying to discuss. Like, we have to get to where flat earthers understand it's okay to look into stuff that can't be scientifically verified, like as in bottled up and counted. You can't count everything, right? And so I just think everyone needs to start to understand the actual framework, actually what's being said, before they get ahead of themselves and they want to talk about physical photons being sentient. You see what I'm saying? So I mean, I hope that is kind of resonating with you. One of the big ones is light. We have electrostatics, magnetism, and light. The ether isn't a viable framework to explain these. All three of those phenomena are the same thing. But,
sorry, Austin. Wasn't it Tesla who said even, like rocks, everything is actually a form of light? That's why he said it all has a resonant frequency. You can destroy, like the stuff John Hutchinson was doing, putting a iron little block of iron and then hitting it with this certain frequency, and it would just disintegrate in front of his eyes and turn to like this dust that just blew away. I mean, everything has a resonant frequency. And if you hit it, yeah, you can totally just destroy whatever it is that you've started shaking with that.
So in other words, you guys, yeah, that's what you guys are saying. So the ether is actually just the static charge of everything. Is that what you guys are saying?
Well, ether, for example, Tesla said that nothing in the material world gets its charge from anywhere other than the background environment. So, like, all the charge that you see is coming from that immaterial metaphysical realm. That's where you get charge. The alternative is we don't know, right? It's like we don't know and we can't explain it, and we try to count it, but our math doesn't work, so we make up virtual particles. And so, like, as flat earthers, we don't need to just like step back here and just like rub our head with our clipboards. You know what I'm saying? We need to try to grow and figure stuff out, apply pattern recognition, and see that they lied to us and that they hid the ether. They hid the ether because it proved that the Earth wasn't spinning, right? And not with the parlor trick, with interferometry, with precise measurements that can be replicated, including by the Air Force in 1987. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is one of the biggest lies ever, dude. Like, it's the lie. So, like, the last thing we should do is like, be like, oh, well, it's basically a religion. No, it's not like a religion, right? It's magnetism isn't a religion. Magnetism is the most prominent force in all of existence. You need to understand
it. Let's not forget that the Air Force also redid the Michelson-Morley test in the 80s and determined that it was absolutely real and it did exist. So, I mean, there's a ton of information that tells us that it's real. Now, I want to move forward a little bit of something because I want to show to you, and you should already know this from Sanyak, but I want to show everybody what it was that we were picking up with the fiber optic gyro, okay? Now, when I was on Behind the Curve, I said we picked up a 15-degree per hour rotation. And at that time, we didn't know about Michelson-Gale or anything like that. We had no idea what the hell was going on. We were blown away, totally blown away by it. Didn't understand it, and then finally I came across this and understood. So I'm going to play a little bit of this clip for everybody. And what this is this is the this is the wrong one. First of all, let me go to the Michelson-Gale experiment. And what this Michelson-Gale experiment does is it will show everybody exactly what it was that we picked up with the fiber optic gyro, and why, you know, and how it actually works with the laser interferometry. Now, some people would call this technology a parlor trick. Well, that's just stupid. It's not a parlor trick. This is working technology that is in use all over the world, and it has very real physical manifestations that we can actually gauge and make measurements on, and determine some bean counting items about it, right? It's not completely woo-woo. It does have physical properties, and at the same time, it doesn't have physical properties. So I'm going to play a couple minutes of this, and then we'll talk about this, okay?
An explanation
Can
of the
everybody hear it?
Michelson-Gale experiment
Okay.
by Malcolm Bowden. In 1925, Michelson and Gale set up an experiment to see if they could detect the rotation of the Earth on its regular 1 revolution per day. They set up a very large rectangle of 12-inch diameter tubes in a field with a light source and mirrors at the corners. The light traveled in opposite directions around the rectangle, and when recombined gave fringe movements, which were only 2.6% different from what they expected would be the result of 1 revolution per day. The very much shorter calibration tube circuit was too small to register any speed difference between the north and south arms. These fringes were used as a basis for the fringe changes when the light went round the full circuit. How did it work? In this diagram, I have exaggerated the size of the rectangle of the Michelson-Gale tubes to make it clear how it worked. The equator travels approximately 25,000 miles in 1 day's rotation. You can see that this speed decreases as the latitude increases. At 15 degrees of latitude, the circumference of that latitude is slightly smaller, so it only travels 24,150 miles in each day. The distance travelled per day reduces as the latitude increases, until it is 0 at the North Pole. Imagine their tube south arm being at the equator and the north arm on the 30 degrees latitude. The light going round the tubes in both directions would experience a higher velocity of the ether going through the south tube at the equator than when travelling through the northern tube at the 30-degree latitude. When they were recombined, they would produce a different fringe interference pattern when compared with the very much shorter path using the calibration circuit. Although their rectangle was far smaller than this, it was sufficiently large to detect the difference with surprising accuracy. From 269 observations, they obtained an average change of 0.230 fringe. This was only 2.6% different to the calculated change expected of 0.236 fringe.
Yep, so basically the math and the actual experimental results agreed 100% with each other. I mean, it was a very, very small, insignificant difference in the two. And we're going to find out, and I'll explain why that you even got that difference here in a minute. But let's continue.
Thus, within experimental accuracy, the ether was passing across the face of the Earth at the predicted 1 revolution per day. In their report, there is no...
AKA 15 degrees per hour, people. Okay, let's continue.
No mention of any conclusions they draw. They simply state the result. Here, surely we can conclude that there is an ether, and either, 1, the Earth is rotating 1 revolution per day, or 2, the ether is rotating around us 1 revolution per day. That it was item 2 that was correct had already been demonstrated by Airy in 1871. As we have shown in a separate YouTube video given here below.
Okay, so basically it had already been confirmed by Airy's failure because of the angle coming in the starlight. And it's an extremely simple optical experiment that proved that the starlight was coming in at the proper angle already, which meant point blank, no doubt about it, no room for misinterpretation, that the ether was rotating around the Earth at 1 revolution per day. What did I say in Behind the Curve? When we turned on that fiber optic gyro, we picked up a drift, a 15 degree per hour drift. Okay, now when you look into the ether and the nature and the past 300 plus years of people that have looked into this, one of the things that they understood very well about the ether is that it took its form from a toroid. And the toroid is a combination of a centrifugal and a centripetal lines of force, centripetal going down through the center like a tornado through the bottom, and centrifugal is a donut shape going around the outside. Okay? So also in understanding that, we are able to ascertain then that because you have a vortex, essentially 2 vortexes that are counter-opposing each other and are meeting in counter space, right? Because they are conjugate, they are meeting in counter space, that there will be from the widest point of the centrifugal and centripetal lines of force to the narrowest, there will be a rotational rate change, right? Now, this is something that I figured out a little bit later on. It's like, okay, well, if it's vortexual, then we should be able to go along and sample along the z-axis of this toroidal pattern, and it should change rotation rates, right? Kind of like the sun, right? What do the sun and the moon do when they go from summer to winter, right? The sun in the summertime goes up high and it stays around the north, and it goes a little bit slower, and in the wintertime, it goes out more towards the edge, and it has to go a little bit faster, right? So that's telling us that the sun and the moon are also following these vortexual lines, and they are actually changing their speed. And they most certainly are changing their speed. Make no mistake about that. Okay? So they are locked into this ether in the exact same methodology that we were testing the rotation of the ether was. So what did I come up with? Well, we already had Aries failure, which told us that it was the ether that was rotating at that rate. So I came up with the idea based on the logical inference that if it is indeed propagating in a centrifugal and centripetal type of vortex, that along the z-axis it must change rates of speed, rotation rates. What did we find out? Well, in Colorado, which was the perfect place to do this, we went to Pikes Peak, which was an altitude at 14,125 feet. We took measurements at Pikes Peak, right? Then we went directly east from Pikes Peak on the exact same latitude line, right? You got to stay on the same latitude line or it invalidates it. And we dropped nearly 10,000 feet and went out on the plains of Colorado, dropped 10,000 feet. And what did we find? Well, we got a very significant rate of change in the rotational variance. In other words, it changed speed, which proved once again that we were measuring the vortex of the ether and not the rotation of the Earth. Okay, so where does this come into play in the real world? Well, I think everybody already knows about the Sagnac experiment, right? And today's laser interferometry equipment all works on laser interferometry, which is basically a matching of speeds on two different axes, or if you're measuring linear speed, or a matching of speed of lights going around in a circle in opposite directions. Now, in one configuration, there will be a longer distance for the light to travel because it is being kept at one single speed by the ether. This is one of the characteristics of the ether. Okay? So, and what happens is that in the case of the fiber optic gyro or ring laser gyro, we are getting a. Is somebody talking?
I'm muted, Eru.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. What's happening is we're getting a difference in speed in the rotation rates going around the fiber optic gyro. And with that, you can then take the phase variance of the light, which is controlled by the ether, and you can actually determine then exactly how much of a change in either X, Y, or Z axis that you have done. Now, one of the most interesting things about the fiber optic and the ring laser gyros is they did much more than measure just the 15-degree per hour rotation on just the Y axis, right, or the rotational axis. They measured that same rotational change on the X, Y, and Z axis. Well, doesn't that make sense? Of course it does, because you are measuring all of the dimensions of the vortexes in the ether itself. All right. So there we have it. We have absolute physical, measurable, bean counting proof that is in technology that is in use and has been for the last 300 years that people say is not physical and therefore it can't exist, and this technology is a parlor trick. That is just utter lunacy. It is moronic to make statements like that when you have technology that is based on that and is amongst our most precision measuring equipment that mankind has ever come up with. You think it's a parlor trick? Give me a break. Okay. So what I want to know is where does anybody get off saying that the ether isn't real? How much evidence do we have for it? How much did I just present? I can go on all day long, not to mention the previous 300 years of what all the greatest physicists and engineers have determined. And, and there are mountains of evidence of it. Okay, so nobody should just be able to make a snap judgment and say, oh, if you're looking at it, you're a moron, and this doesn't exist, because it most certainly does. And I simply cannot accept anybody saying that it doesn't. Tell me where I'm wrong. Anybody.
Yeah, and to say that it's not science, well, neither is saying that you need a container to have gas pressure. There is no scientific evidence of that. That's how hard it is to apply the scientific method. It has to be very stern and rigorous, and there's many things, not just, the ether or about electricity, but many things we can't scientifically prove. But that's why we call them laws, because they work every single time we do them. You put high pressure in a balloon, you open the balloon, it comes out. It happens every time, but that's not science.
And they use the ideal gas
just
law, which uses a mathematical. It's literally goes on infinitely.
Narnia.
Math.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another
Narnia.
misunderstanding of our opponents. Their whole gas go down, go boom boom. They do not understand the ideal gas law. And Zach, if you can find that one clip of the science guy, the physics professor that remember we were listening to, who explains. Actually, you can find it all over the place, but that one was really good. But
yeah, I'll see what I can dig up.
But I would also like to point out that they're not going to rebut this. They're going to hand wave dismiss.
Of course they are.
Right, because they can't debate any of it, and they're posting a video, right? And Oakley's already posting a video like in the middle of our show about the show. But also, I will just say, just so for the audience to keep it, actually productive here. So like I said, you can just ignore this evidence if you want to, call it a parlor trick, and then invoke the double slit, which says the photon is a god. But everyone knows you're being a hypocrite. But it's important to note that the mainstream. I was talking to a Glober the other day, Bob, and the Glober said the ether's been debunked. I'm like, oh yeah, how was that? And he said Michelson-Morley and Aries failure,
which are the very things that proved it.
Dude, he invoked the two things that prove it. And I'm like, oh, I wonder why the mainstream to this day is having to blatantly lie and misrepresent what happened and say that it disproves the ether when it literally did the opposite. So us as truthers shouldn't even look into this, or you're stupid, right? When they're still lying like a century later.
And really, that's what it comes down to, guys. The problem that we have with Oakley and his crew is not only do they have, virtually no scientific training or understanding of any of this, but they will actually yell and scream and holler at people and tell you that you're a moron for even looking into it. It's like, really? Is that the way you're supposed to conduct yourself? We would never do that, ever. And in fact, we encourage you look into it.
That is the opposite of professionalism, right?
Yeah,
totally.
What's crazy, dude, is their whole argument is still the same thing, which is if you have the ether, then you have to have a wave. So they're literally, their whole argument is so low level that it is to impose a false dichotomy of light has to be a particle or a wave, while they claim that it is both the particle and a wave, but that the wave function is just math. But they can't say that because it moves as if a wave. It's not as simple as saying it's just math. Then they have to claim the single photon acts like a wave and gives you a photon, gives you an interference pattern, right? When we're saying waves aren't things, they're just types of movement, like Zack elegantly stated, you can wave your hand, you can't hand a wave. It's a type of movement, which means there has to be something that's moving. It's already there. It's not traveling from point A to point B. We are not claiming that light is a wave that is moving from point A to point B. That is a straw man. And the fact that you claim light has to be a wave or a particle is a false dichotomy. Think about that. Like, it's not complicated.
I supposedly, I don't know if it's true, but supposedly the photon, quote unquote, don't travel in a straight path. It's traveling, making a wave.
Yeah, I just don't understand why everybody cannot just work together on it. I mean,
well, I'll tell you why. It's because you have people out there who have been saying things about certain apparatuses. For instance, when I hear about the fiber optic gyro, what do? I go and research it and study it and figure out what the hell this thing is. Now, whether or not I accept its results is separate from this conversation. I hear other people on the other side who make a video the other day, put out a video talking about the gyro, but they don't understand what a ring-lobster gyro is. They're talking about rigidity in space, and you're like, dude, this is a light-driven interferometer. And this is a guy who's been making fun of Bob and saying, "Oh, there's no 15 degree because this and this," and he goes, everything's wrong with this gyro, but he's confused. He doesn't even know what the gyro is. He doesn't know what a ring laser gyro is. You can play that video and see that he has no idea, no clue. So when you have people like that are militant, calling people names, who don't even understand what they're talking about, that's why you just can't get along. What are you supposed to do in that case?
Yeah, or what do you do when you're talking to someone and then you say, "No, I'm saying that the light's already there, Oakley." And he says, "Oh, so whenever the room is dark, the light's already there?" And I said, "Yes, there's already light there." And they all laugh at me. "Ha ha, you're such an idiot." The whole panel starts calling me names, talking about how stupid I am. So then I go to say, "What about the non-visible spectrum of light?" I get muted midway through that sentence 4 consecutive times as they all chant about how stupid I am. Then I finally get to say, "What about the non-visible spectrum of light?" And then they all just immediately shift, run away, change the subject to another straw man. Like, that's the kind of people that we're dealing with. Like, point blank, dishonest, remedial debates, right? So I don't know where all the arrogance is coming from, but yeah, if light's already there, if it's literally in every square inch of existence because there's background radiation and not just the visible light is what light is. And then I say, you're conflating the rate of illumination or perception with what light itself is. It's already there, and it's been 3 weeks, and I've gotten no rebuttal. Right, so it's
so what do you think would happen if, let's say back, I don't know how many hundreds of years ago it would have been, that there was no other kind of light? So basically, if people would have come along saying, "I think that there's other types of light that we can't see," they just would have got laughed out of the building by these guys, right? Because they didn't know that infrared light existed. They didn't know X-ray light existed. They didn't know gamma rays existed. So to me, it seems like that's where we're at with this ether idea, is to just dismiss things and make fun of people. I think is a bad position to take, because you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah, and
I
it's
just
just
wanna
like,
know-
Exactly right.
go ahead.
With the interferometer gyro, doesn't that show that the light travels at different speeds though? Because that's what they're claiming.
No,
Absolutely.
again. Well, okay. I have to say, you have to understand, there is a difference in what the light itself is, physically traveling from point A to point B, and then how quickly we see the illumination. So it's a
Right,
rate of
and
induction.
I misspoke. It shows that there is a difference in light speed around the respective paths.
Right.
The ether is controlling the speed of light through the rate of induction, commensurate with whatever the medium itself is. Okay, but and this is how it is so precise, Keith. It is so precise that we can actually detect distances or measurements down to thousands or 10,000s or even 100,000s of a micron.
And that's how we know we're not moving around the sun.
Exactly. And it's exactly how we know we're not moving around the sun. And, so
And they
what
knew
did
that.
say?
And they knew that, right? When Michelson-Morley did it, they love to talk it as a null result, but it actually wasn't a null result. It was actually
No.
1/40th of what it was supposed to be. So 1/40th of 66,000 miles per hour is about 1,500 miles per hour. So what they were actually picking up is the ether.
Exactly. And dude, the fact is of the matter that we have a quantification of the rate of induction, right? So light illuminates at around the same rate, right? So, but it's not traveling. Like we have observations of transmissions through coaxial cables 3 times the alleged speed of light in a vacuum. Cherkanoff radiation shows light within water way faster than it's supposed to be with the speed of light in water, right? We have all kinds of things that show that that's not true. But we use the quantification of the illumination rate, which is an induction rate, right? And then everyone starts chanting again saying, "Oh, you don't have a speed, but you need a rate, you dumbo. That's a speed, ha ha ha." Because again, they don't understand this simple remark, right? Which is that you're quantifying the rate of perception or illumination. That is not synonymous with what light itself is. It is not physically traveling. So then I can give them like an elementary analogy. If you have a lake, right? And then you see a ripple go from one side of the lake to the other side of the lake, right? If you count how fast it takes that wave to move through the water, how long did it take the lake to get to the other side of the lake? Yeah, it was already there. It was already there. So
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so then it's a straw man to
Yeah.
say that light's a wave, that we have to say light's a wave that travels from point A to point B. It's a rudimentary misunderstanding of what's being stated. You understand how ironic this is?
Yeah, so if we just change the frequency, there you're having the different light spectrums.
Exactly, and that excites it, and then we see it, and then it induces back into the ether and is no longer visible once you remove that disturbance, the source of the disturbance. But you can't have light without electricity.
Remember one thing about frequency and resonance, guys, is that the closer you are to resonance, the more power transfer there will be, the more speed there will be. The more in a condition of non-resonance or disresonance or discordance, the slower things will be. Therefore, the medium does make a difference. And, that's why we have all these different things. And this, like I said, this kind of goes back to the ideal gas law. And the ideal gas law is, like I said, is being totally misunderstood in that, they tell us that gas goes in all directions constantly, and it will do so as long as it's under excitation by either heat or pressure, right? But what they will also say then, but the ideal gas law is a lie. Why is it a lie? Why would they lie about that? Well, the reason that they say that, and they do that, and it's true, is because the gas does succumb to like downward forces. It does succumb to things. They only invoke the ideal gas law because it helps the mathematics work, right? That's the only reason. Other than that, the gas is not behaving any different than anything else. If you put the lightest gas that we're aware of, hydrogen, in a vacuum chamber, I guarantee you it will sit at the bottom of that vacuum chamber until some other material like helium comes in and displaces it. Then the helium will be at the bottom and the hydrogen will sit on top of the helium. Right now, and then if you add excitation by heat or stimuli pressure, then it's going to start firing the stuff up. It's going to become homogeneous, and it's going to go firing all over the place. But this is another misunderstanding by somebody that has no scientific background whatsoever, has no damn idea what he's talking about, and yet he is sitting there criticizing people for doing their own research and telling you.
Sorry.
It's unbelievable. It's absolutely.
I just want to make sure that this is understood.
It's the epitome of troll behavior.
I just want to make sure this is understood because I know that it's not intuitive based on how we were taught. Okay, so we're using the word speed, but it's a rate of induction, and that's the rate of induction is how quickly we see the light illuminate. We've quantified that. We can use it for laser distance finders. We can use it for radar, right? Because it's consistent. The rate of induction relative to the medium. Okay, that's called the quote unquote speed of light. That's what it's called. But it is not physically traveling from point A to point B because the light is the background illuminating. It's already there. So it's a rate of induction, okay? But it is not a speed physically traveling from point A to point B. And it's important that people understand what's actually being said. Light is not a wave nor a particle because waves aren't things in and of themselves. They're just a type of movement. It's a disturbance of what's already there. You have technically, you have a coaxial circuit. You have an oscillating electric field, an oscillating magnetic field, right? And then you have intersections of that. They try to isolate it. They make up stories of physical particles of little spheres called photons because Einstein told them to. Okay, so the lake's already there. It doesn't matter if you look at the wave, the lake didn't travel from point A to point B. It's an important distinction to make because now all of a sudden we can explain all the phenomena. And it's not that means that light's already there. Austin, you're crazy. You're saying light's already there. Yeah, light's everywhere. No, it's not. It's a dark room over here. No, there's literally background radiation, aka light everywhere. Visible light and the entire light spectrum are not the same thing. That's why animals can see light that we can't see. Because that's also light. X-ray is also light. Radio waves is also light. Okay, light's everywhere. We're just seeing a certain spectrum that is perceivable to the naked eye, which we call visible light, based on the excitation of the background illuminating. This may be higher level, okay, but the last thing it is that the people
So guys, as I mentioned,
the people that are discussing it and understand it are an embarrassment to flat Earth and are stupid and need to be ridiculed and scalped. Okay, that's the point here. I think that's what we're trying to establish. It's like agree to disagree. Don't discuss it. but definitely don't go around falsely touting intellectual high ground and parading people. I mean, I think it's insane. I think it's absolutely insane. So, okay, I'll stop anything.
Okay. So, all right. So, Zach, do you have a timestamp where he actually explains that on this video? Or if you could find one, that would be great.
Yeah. 7 minutes. 7 minutes in.
7 minutes. Okay. So we're going to listen to this. And I just saw something in the chat. I hope to God this isn't what I think it is. Because otherwise I'm really going to get pissed. But let me look and see whose video, who put up this lying shits it gets it on Globebusters.
Yeah, that's Oakley posted that a few seconds ago.
It says Flatzoid channel.
I'm asking if light is a photon.
Oh God, what? See,
yeah, I was also very when I saw that pop, I was like, what? Why does it say Flatzoid channel? I don't post anything.
All right, and before I play this, guys, I want to make something perfectly clear, and I'm not speaking for anybody else other than me, because people ask why I get triggered about this, but I'm going to tell you a little secret about Oakley, and then I'm going to shut up about it because we're never going to speak about them again because they're a bunch of damn trolls, and frankly, they can go to hell. Okay. But because of the fact that we have actually thought things like this through, because of the fact that we are trying to propose a different model, we are looking at things like the Aether and stuff like this. As a result of that, Nathan Oakley has attacked each and every one of us. Quantum Eraser has attacked each and every one of us, even people that he doesn't even know, like Iru. Arwen has gone around spreading rumors that I support child rape and child molestation, all because we disagree on a technical point about gravity and the ether. Now, if this isn't the lowest bunch of pieces of shit there are on the web, I don't know what else to say. But they have Austin on their channel. Nathan cuts him off, asks him how his balls taste, all this stuff. I mean, these people are egregiously disgusting. And that's all I'm going to say about it. And this is why we don't get along with them. This is why we will never work with them. And they are a bunch of morons. And this is also why they have, whopping 2-digit audiences. Because Nathan can't control himself. He's out of control. All he does is scream and holler and all this stuff. And he has absolutely zero technical training whatsoever. And he thinks he knows it all and he wants to be king of flat earth. Fine. If you want to be king of flat earth, Nathan, you can be king of flat earth. But leave the rest of the community out of it and quit expressing your disgust for people that are looking into this with earnestly. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. So let's go ahead and play this at 7 minutes and find out where else Nathan is wrong about this. And then we will continue our discussion in a friendly way. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say about it, guys. And I'm sorry I did this, but it's been eating at me for well over a year and I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with it. So let's go about 7 minutes here.
And what allows this to be the case? Don't write this down. Oh, shoot.
Okay, can you hear it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And of make-believe. And guys, this is not stupid and this is not dumb down. But guys, as they're flying around, what are they experiencing? They're running into each other. What else? Running into the side of the balloon. That's why they push out and it creates pressure because literally the molecules are pushing out. But guys, the deal is this. There are an uncountable number of molecules inside this balloon. It's my breath. But whatever the gases are inside of here, guys, this is absolutely chaotic. It defies study because it's so complicated. You get the idea? So guys, the question is, how do we fix this? And the answer is we go to the land of make-believe. And
Narnia? You go to the land of Narnia to fix this? No, tell us more.
Guys, this is not stupid and this is not dumbed down. This is smart science. If you've got a system that's so complicated that you can't study it, what do? You simplify the system. And guys, that's what ideal gases are. Ideal gases are simplified gases that make our lives easier. Now, guys, be clear. Do ideal gases really exist? No, but we treat them as if they exist. And what allows this to be the case? Don't write this down. Oh, shoot. Guys, don't write this down until I tell you. So guys, it goes like this. The thought is this: when we study gases, these things are so complicated, they're bordering on impossible to study. So being good scientists, we come up with more simple models. Guys, the thing that allows this to work is the use of these more simple models not only allows us to describe them, the math doesn't change very much. So these simplified models don't create significant changes in our results. So guys, the question then becomes this, and this is where you want to start writing this down. What are the simplifications that make the model appropriately less complex? And guys, it's this. There are two simplifications. You need to understand them. Simplification number one. So ideal gases are gases composed of particles with ... Oversimplification number one, mass but no volume. That is oversimplification number one. They have mass but no volume. So guys, what does this mean? What does it mean to have mass but no volume? What does it mean to have mass? You exist, you have weight, you're there, you're matter, you matter. But guys, what does it mean to not have volume? You don't take up space. Can you be there and not take up space? No, this is make-believe. But guys, here's the deal. This is actually an important simplification, but it's also appropriate. And this is why it's appropriate. If you could see inside of a sample of gas, those molecules are so spread out that the size of the molecules themselves doesn't really matter. The word that we use is insignificant. That's the word you want to use on the test. The molecules inside of a gas are so spread out that the size of the molecules themselves doesn't really matter.
And can you stop it for a sec, Bob?
Yep,
this is all based on the fact that there are atoms that make up molecules. I don't think that a gas molecule has ever been photographed. I would just take a wild guess, but I bet no gas molecule has ever been photographed.
It has not.
I'll bet you're right. Okay. So I will post this in the show notes with everybody. You can go through this whole thing, but this is what's going on. And like I said, you can go over and you can see the nonsense that Oakley's putting up on his channel. They are just childish, and we're done with them. And so, Keith, I hope you can understand what our problem is. Why we can't get along with them, because they can't get along with us. I have tried many times to reconcile with them and say, can't we get along? I want to get along. Yes. Kumbaya, whatever, because it's far better than fighting and arguing all the time. But we're not the ones starting this fight. Do you understand that?
Yeah, look, it takes two to tango. So obviously, if you want to
when you make personal YouTube shorts personally attacking people, I wonder how long you're supposed to get to do that. But I want to again clarify this. So what the video is about is me asking him about a single. I said, how does a single photon create a wave pattern? He said it doesn't. I guess he said that and I didn't hear him. So then I've been going around saying they won't answer the question, and then he put that I'm a liar, right? Anyway, so again, they actually won't answer the question. He's wrong. He's wrong, but I'll just read it. So, can one photon create an interference pattern? Thus, it is possible to perform the double-slit experiment using a single photon. In this single photon variation, imaging will still detect fringe patterns, but they will be built up by multiple photon detections. Even though single photons pass through the slit, interference still occurs. Can a single photon interfere with itself? Each photon interferes only with itself. So this is what they say about it, right? And so that's the whole point, is that you have to, it's just kind of crazy that I have to keep going into this, but the point is that how can a single photon give you an interference pattern? And we're not claiming that light is a wave or a particle. That's a false dichotomy. Waves aren't things. It's just a movement in the medium. Okay. Sorry. It's just really
waving. But yeah, one thing you won't see, Keith, is us, making little short videos, blasting people and saying how ashamed of them we are, and they're disgraced to flat Earth because they're looking at something. You will never see that here, ever.
But Bob, you agree it's waving, but it's not a wave, right? Like it's not like a
it's a verb, it's a verb, not a noun.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, because that's one thing I don't understand. Everybody's supposed to be working together. This whole thing is war between the two sides. Is kind of ripping us apart away from the actual discussion of the globe demolishment.
Well, it's been that way for a while.
It's been that way for quite a while. And believe me, I have tried Well, 3 times. I have tried 3 times. I would go into all the sort of details, but I already gave you an overview. What's the retaliation? That I'm a child molester? Are you freaking kidding me? What,
Yeah,
I mean, what
Platzoid,
kind of
bro.
rebuttal is that?
Bro, I went between FED and Globebusters quite a few times when there was like all this bad blood, I guess, I didn't know about. And I walked everyone off the ledge. I was the peacekeeper. I'm like, let's not do this. We got to have a unified front. Tried to be all buddy-buddy with everyone, keep everyone cool. Got berated about electrostatics when I got pulled on there. And got asked about my opinion about Aether. Got berated. Told him I didn't claim it was science, it's just my opinion. And got YouTube shorts made about me, cut up, insulted. And then like 3 consecutive weeks of them attacking every single person that I know. Viciously sending people after me to just troll me constantly, and then go back on there and the same thing happens again as I was asked to go on there. So can you maybe enlighten me how it is that they're not just objectively in the wrong, so we can try and work on what we're doing wrong here, because it's
Sounds
really
no
petty. I
different
guess
than FTFE, right?
it's worse than FTFE.
You know, he's at the bottom of the barrel there when he has to resort to that kind of junk.
That's crazy, bro.
Because at the end of the day, because I think at the end of the day, everybody just has to respect someone else's opinion and beliefs. So, I mean, what does it help attacking someone on it if you're just
Our
not
thoughts
going to
exactly. Our sentiments exactly.
And I don't have a problem if people want to say what they believe, you know, and be able to. I mean, like, if I were to ask you, does science prove things? What would you say, Flatzoid?
Sorry?
Can science prove things?
They do prove the hypothesis, so they obviously prove something.
Okay.
They disprove the null, and they prove your hypothesis. So yes, they prove.
Because, you know, even every scientist would say that science doesn't prove things, because they're smart enough to recognize that it'd be impossible for you to ever have all the variables in place to know everything that's going on. And plus, you're a human being. The results don't just show up and nobody has to interpret them. People have to interpret them, and people have biases. So it's funny to me that we have this crew that's going around saying science can prove things. Like, where are you getting that from? Prove what?
That's what I'm saying. It proves the hypothesis.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like that something would be.
Your experiment proves your hypothesis.
Like,
That's how
if you claim, think about this, Flat. So if you claim something's the cause of an effect, right, and then you say, oh, it does cause the effect. How do you know it's the only cause? That's what Jeran's saying. You don't know all the variables. And also, Flatzoid, can you scientifically prove the creator?
No, that's spiritual. That's supernatural. It's about natural law.
Right. So you can't independently manipulate and vary a creator to prove them. Do you agree that we can show that by logical necessity that if this Earth is designed, then it must have been designed, and that's a logical proof?
Yes.
So you can prove things without science, right? You can just use logic?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it'll still be based on your own opinion on what you decide is proof to you or not. It comes down to your preference and opinion. That's what I'm saying. With science, you can prove an hypothesis. You've proved the hypothesis that this is the cause. You can go and create another hypothesis once again to try and prove another cause for the effect. But you've already proved your hypothesis. That's what science does. It just proves your hypothesis.
So I guess I don't get that. If I have a question as to why the sun keeps coming up every day at 6 a.m., and I ask myself, maybe it's when I open the drape, that's what causes the sun to come up. So every day I go there and I open the drape and the sun comes up. So now I've proven that the sun comes up due to my drape being pulled?
No, that's just begging the question and then affirming the consequence. But you understand what I'm saying?
But isn't that what
you can?
So what's different about that than any other?
You can make an hypothesis for something, and you can affirm the hypothesis. You've proved the hypothesis. Doesn't mean it's the only cause for it. It's just you've proved that hypothesis. You can have another cause.
That it is a cause. But here's this. Watch this, Flatzoid. So, okay, so with the diffraction, right? They're saying that diffraction can be science. It's a scientific experiment. Now, Jeranism just pointed out to you that we'll know because people interpret things and have a bias. So science doesn't definitively prove things. I'll give you an example. They're talking about the double-slit experiment, right? And acting like that's science. But now they're walking it back saying it's not. And they're talking about diffraction. Diffraction requires the assumption and reification that light travels from point A to point B. By definition, it's defined as the splitting of a beam traveling. So do you see how you can claim that you can science it because it's naturally occurring, But if you go into it with the faulty presupposition, you're actually not proving anything.
That's what I said. They just proved their hypothesis. That's all. And
They didn't prove their hypothesis.
What do you mean? They didn't prove that.
Yeah, they didn't prove that it
Science
travels
makes-
from point A to point
I
B.
mean, I can make an hypothesis to say light doesn't come from electricity. It's me pressing the light switch and it comes on. I've just proved my hypothesis because I put the light switch on. It came on. I've affirmed the consequence by having my hypothesis proved. It doesn't mean there's not an actual cause for it. I've just affirmed my positive claim about my hypothesis. That's all.
But did you hear I asked you a
Science is
specific
just
question
systematized knowledge.
about diffraction? Sorry, it's just diffraction. They're saying diffraction can be science. Diffraction, they are defining as light traveling as a beam and splitting up because of physical obstruction. So that has a base presupposition baked into it. That isn't science proving anything if your base presupposition is wrong. If your interpretation of the phenomena is wrong, then your science is automatically wrong.
Right. Like, I mean, look at this whole entire thing of the galaxies or the universe is expanding. You know, the more I've been reading Edwin Hubble's book, it's clearly not. They came up with a hypothesis. They think they proved it. They were able to find something that would fit the theory, but it's never been proved. There's no proof of it at all. So it's just funny to me that anybody would go around saying science can prove anything. You could never. You're going to have biases. Who's going to constitute whether you've actually proven something?
No,
That's what I'm
science
saying.
can't prove it.
No,
It can't
that's
prove
what
it
I'm
because you've got to understand that there may be new information in the future
Exactly.
that could change your current theory
Exactly.
and your boundaries that you've set on the hypothesis.
Gleam, is that you?
That is
Yeah.
I.
Oh,
Look at that.
fantastic. Okay. Hey, Gleam. I was
Bonjour,
hoping
sir.
you would make it on. I don't know how much you've heard of this so far, but it's pretty lively. And I know you know quite a bit about the ether, and I figured you could definitely add a lot to this conversation. So, and also Kyle is with us as well. So, Kyle, did you have any comments that you wanted to get in? I know you.
I was just
tried
saying
to-
science is systematized knowledge in general. You're just collecting a bunch of observations and organizing it. And then after that, you can just kind of come up with all kinds of different conclusions. And yes, your conclusions can be wrong. But yeah, it's just the observations themselves that you're really talking about. And so if you're looking at something that's kind of, as long as it's organized, it's science. I don't know what else to say on that.
I mean, we can go all day flatsoid.
It's
Like, so
very-
they claim they science
Sorry,
density and
Russell.
buoyancy, right? Sorry, they claim they science density and buoyancy. What causes things to go up or down? Density and buoyancy, we can science it, right? So then they manipulate the medium, and then it goes up or it goes down. Okay, well, what about the fact that everything that you manipulated was electrostatic intrinsically, and if you manipulate electrostatics, things will float and go up. That means you did not count for all the variables. So when you say the cause of the effect of things going up and down is density and buoyancy, you're wrong, and your science didn't prove anything because you had a base presupposition that was incorrect.
You don't have an actual insight
Yeah,
into
but
every
that's
single
what I'm trying to
molecule
say.
and atom that's going on there. You don't have insight, and you would never be able to have insight into that.
But that's what I'm saying. He had an hypothesis for cause and effect. He took that hypothesis and he tested it and he validated the cause for the
Yeah,
effect.
but you know what, Keith? You can get the same result. You can get the same result without doing a damn thing to that egg, without pouring anything into it. Just let it sit there for a week, and it's going to rise. Why?
The density changes in an egg after a week.
No, but what's happening? This isn't part of his hypothesis. I'll tell you what's happening. The egg is going bad. It is now generating sulfuric gases, right? And it's going to rise all by itself. So,
Yeah, but when it happens, doesn't it change its density?
Okay, let me meet you halfway here, Flatsoid. Okay, he's showing that the variable. Listen, Flatsoid. He's showing that the variable of density does affect things going up and down.
All right, nobody
okay?
disagrees with that.
But he presented it like it was definitive scientific proof that that is the sole cause of things going up and down. And he did not account for something called electrostatics when the glass, the water, and the egg are all electrostatic. And if you manipulate electrostatics, you can make things go up, which means objectively his claim that he definitively proved the sole causal agent of downward acceleration is wrong, and he did not scientifically prove anything. He didn't account for a provable variable.
That's what I'm trying to explain. He only proved his hypothesis. That was it. You can make another hypothesis with another cause for the effect.
I don't get what you're mean. I don't know what you mean by that. So in my case where I was talking about the sun rising, then I did prove that the sun rises because I opened the drape?
Yeah, you proved your hypothesis.
What's the point of that?
That's what I'm saying.
No, he'll say that you can't science the actual you can't manipulate the sun, right? You can't physically independently manipulate the sun. And so the point is that you can logically prove things without science. That's what this discussion is. And you can't go around telling people they're stupid. And you can't just make presuppositions that are faulty at the beginning because you don't account for all your variables. Science, the etymology is to know. But yeah, natural science has a method, but it doesn't account for everything. That rigid dogmatic script is inefficient, and it's always relative to the faulty presuppositions of the person carrying out the demonstration. This is just objective, bro.
Well, yeah, and when you talk about science, we're putting ourselves into a little box where all the walls are the limits of our human senses. If you have to observe it for it to be considered science, there are things around us we can't observe. We can measure them with the technology we have, and then we can manipulate it and do all kinds of stuff with it. We know there's magnetic field lines. We use them on all kinds of maps, all the way down to hiking maps, where people go hiking really long trails. They get magnetic declination maps, so they know when they're using their compass how they have to set it. I mean, there's things out there that are the electric field. We know it is there. We can measure it. We cannot scientifically do anything with any of this stuff, though. It's just not testable scientifically.
I think at the end of the day, science falls almost under scientism.
Amen to that, brother.
Yeah.
Wait, do you agree that you can't science the second law of thermodynamics?
No, it's a natural law.
Okay. So can we acknowledge and invoke things as definitive truth or as true without it being science?
Yes, I would agree with that.
So do we have to run it all by Oakley and QE and see if they approve of us invoking something else outside of science, or do we get to pick and choose? And the double-slit's an experiment, but Michelson-Morley doing the same thing using light is a parlor. Yeah.
I mean, science is always open to interpretation. It should always be advancing. Never definitive, never set in stone.
Can I just bite back on exactly that as well, what you just said, backing up your statement there, Jeran, but also kind of going anti what Flatzoid just said about the second law. The second law of thermodynamics, as I understand it, was actually changed by Boltzmann in the early 1900s. And it was changed from entropy always increases to entropy almost always increases. And he basically, it's said to be that thermodynamics, or studying the second law of thermodynamics, is the deadliest science to study, because so many people have actually committed suicide over just studying it, because Boltzmann actually committed suicide, and one of his main pushbacks was that he was going against literally every single law of science by basically saying all your laws only happen most of the time. None of them happen all of the time. There will always be an exception. And that was Boltzmann's changed, and that's what brought in the likes of mathematical statistical analysis or statistical mechanics.
This be why, Gleam, is this why they have Maxwell's demon?
That's kind of like a hidden variable thing. This is more like how Boltzmann had it is Boltzmann's universe in a box. This is his thought experiment. If you put the universe in a box, you started off with one massive lump in the middle, and it exploded into many fragments, many pieces, and they all went in all directions. What would happen is that loads of fragments would hit all the edges of the box. They would all come back. They would collide. They would cause many swirls, all of this. But he said at one point in time, no matter what, if you carry on through billions of years, it could possibly be. But at one point in time, there will be a point in time where all of these fragments rejoin in the center again. Statistically, it has to happen at some point in time. And that was where the whole point of the measurement problem come in, where you can't tell whether something has a certain velocity and momentum versus the position. And that kind of gave birth, but wasn't the birth bringer of quantum mechanics, which is a mathematical model to say, right, describe all different positions, and then there is a statistical probability of a path or a particular route or an energy. That's as I understand it. And big up Bob for my introduction. But yeah, I very much love Aether as a hobby. Definitely. I snort it, so Globers tell me. But yeah, I'm no professional scientist on it. I've just kind of read into there's a whole story hidden away from everyone, hidden in plain sight is the perfect phrase for it. Where Aether has never left mainstream science at all. I've got literally papers that are published this month on what's known as Einstein Aether theory, and it's to do with basically they're bringing the ether back using Einstein's relativity and saying no, there is a scalar field that Einstein neglected. But there is this scalar field called the ether that we're bringing back in that acts as a pressure, and that is how we're going to explain the likes of dark matter, dark energy. So it's never left science. The idea of ether has been throughout. You can literally check any year and then type ether paper, and you will always find throughout from now right the way back to the 1900s, you will find a paper of every year. One scientist has at least written one paper about the ether. It's never left science. It is one of the cornerstones of science, I'd say. Anyway, let me shut up, John.
Do you think they're going to play off dark matter as ether now?
Well, they're going to try
proposed as. It's proposed as. It's all on interpretation, and I can't. I'm not getting into the drama of the FED slate because, in all honesty, when I first ever got into the likes of flat Earth, it was through, and everyone will probably know this, the Rupert Sheldrake speed of light has changed. That's what got me into. It was that TED Talk, the banned TED Talk, that caused the controversy that got me into science isn't all what it's made out to be, and then. It was these exact videos that Bob's been showing tonight about the ether that then led me on to read the Michelson-Morley paper, that then led me on to Paul Dirac, going right the way through quantum mechanics, the way Feynman particleized and reversed engineered, so to say, Paul Dirac's ether, and how we've got it today, where they're basically saying, it's not quite working. We need an ether reintroducing, or some scientists are. I'm not saying the mainstream everybody is, but it's definitely never left science.
Dark matter was an abysmal failure. I mean, they never even came close to detecting it. And, that changes the entire paradigm of the way we look at the universe.
That's because they had to throw it out.
Here's a question.
To be spinning, and they say that it's dark because it doesn't interact with electromagnetic phenomena, as the ether does, of course. And Einstein said that it can't be treated as a medium with motion applied to it because that would debunk that the Earth is revolving. And so that was the difference. It was replaced by relativity as a devotion to heliocentrism.
Does a hypothesis have to be right in order to be considered science?
No, what do you mean? Getting it wrong is a good thing.
Yeah, hypotheses can be wrong. And so even if you don't agree with something, that doesn't mean it's not science. Even if they're absolutely wrong on a matter.
Because if I do the window thing again and I say, okay, the sun's going to rise because I'm pulling the drape open. Well, guess what? If I go at 4 p.m. and pull the drape open and notice that the sun doesn't rise, I've now invalidated that hypothesis, which only gets you closer to the truth. We now know that it's not the opening of the drape causing the sun to rise.
So
but don't forget that
that's not science. That's just ridiculous. You're just trolling at the moment when you're going to that.
Well, when you're just to get my point across, the reason I don't like the idea of science proving things is because you have people like Neil deGrasse Tyson out there saying the most ridiculous thing ever, which is science is true whether or not you believe in it, which is a joke because science is always progressing. Everything that they thought in 1700 is wrong and 1800 is wrong is 1900. So everything is moving, and these guys are adopting things. Yeah, well, and it could be the opposite, because if you have faulty foundations, which clearly astrophysics does and cosmology does, and you keep
quantum
building
mechanics.
Yeah, if you keep building off of that, then you're just building in the wrong direction. And it doesn't mean that your mathematics don't work out. Sure, your math can work. Math, you can prove things in math. You can prove things in math, but you're just proving a language and a way of describing something, but it's not actually proof, right? I guess you would call it a mathematic. Don't get me wrong, mathematical proofs exist.
Yeah, and this is why they struggle with gravity, because they have to keep changing it because they don't actually prove anything with it.
Yeah, and
that's why they struggle with quantum mechanics. They have to keep changing it. And when we have people that are flat earthers that are falling for the trick that if you can't quantify it, then it doesn't exist, then we got a problem. And it's a philosophy called empiricism, which is that all knowledge can only be obtained by the senses and scientific experimentation. That's called empiricism, which is intrinsically contradictory because it is a philosophy. And it's invoking the idea of knowledge, which cannot be scientifically proven because it's an abstract philosophy. So it was done away with a long time ago. If people applied only empiricism, they would literally not be able to ever progress or understand anything in the world pretty much. It's a very rudimentary confinement of knowledge. It's ignorant.
Yep. Ira, did you have something you wanted to comment on?
No, I just want to comment about the ritual of Jeranism, of Jeran proving that the suns rise. But remember that Jack Parson prayed every rocket launch to the God path.
Again,
right?
and if the rocket succeeded, then that's proof.
It's a joke. It's a joke, but at the same time, it's not a joke. I mean,
yeah, because science never says yes to a theory. It should, in most cases, say maybe. Or actually, in most cases, it would say no. But
yeah, and if you, for example, if you read real papers from the Academy of for example, Kepler, when Kepler started trying to make his law, there is a paragraph saying that Kepler every night prayed to God for Copernicus was right. And what I'm trying to say with this is that everything is going to be mixed up, between science and beliefs, science and religion, science and other stuff that we cannot prove, but we're trying to use every day. It's trying to connect with something else and trying to, interact with non-material things. And in fact, remember what we said, I think it was the last show, with the paper from the CIA talking about if you're going to make astral projection in terms of the militaries, guys, you must be warning that they must be able to lead with non-physical entities. What I'm trying to say is we are surrounded by mediums or non-material things. And, you cannot prove. Maybe you can feel, maybe you can guess, maybe you can use whatever etymology you want, but we must be upset that we are surrounded with non-material things. And maybe our own body, our own brain, our own biology is capable to interact with that, but not proven in terms of matter.
And I think you can tell the difference between somebody who's got some sort of knowledge about science and somebody who doesn't by those going around saying that science proves things. Clearly, Neil deGrasse doesn't have a clue, and he's just spouting off, and other people that are claiming the same thing, that science proves things, they don't understand science then. To me.
Yeah, and the nuance is that he's saying that, it can specifically prove or falsify a specific hypothesis. But when you're claiming a cause, right, it's not the whole cause because you don't know all the variables. So, if you want to play that nuanced game, and whatever, but the point remains that you're not actually proving something because you're not proving the actual cause just because it's a variable that affects it.
Right. These guys, the Globers go out and they look off in the distance and they maybe see a building hid by a little bit of water and they say, okay, well, my hypothesis is that that's because of Earth curve, and I do the measurements and it is because of Earth curve. But they didn't prove anything. It's all based on their assumptions. It's based off of what they think is going on or what they've been told is going on. There's just so many variables that I find it hard to believe anybody's going around saying things prove things.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the value of it because the globe Earth is propagated with pseudoscience, which is just mathematical reifications, and it's good to call them out. Like, well, what'd you do to prove this? What's the experiment? But that doesn't go to say that you literally can't discuss anything unless there are two people that tell you, as the unelected cult leaders, that it's okay. Like Flatsoid, if I ask you a question, bro, does there exist a metaphysical realm?
Metaphysical, as in it's not physical. It's just, but it's there.
Beyond
Yeah,
physical. Right. Because we have a consciousness, right? So where does that exist within? Like the metaphysical. So does the metaphysical have an interaction with the physical?
Obviously.
Okay, so then we need to at least be able to entertain that when trying to explain phenomena within the physical world, right?
Yeah, that's why I said it's supernatural. You first require supernatural before you could have a natural. And because it's above natural, you can't provide evidence naturally for something that's supernatural.
Can you provide evidence logically for it?
Yeah, you can have logical inference for it, but you can't naturally prove it.
But you can provide logical evidence, and if you have a true dichotomy, then you can logically show that by way of axiom. So if I say electromagnetic phenomena must be sustained within something, because the alternative is that it's sustained within nothing, that's a true dichotomy. Either something's there sustaining it, or it can be sustained within nothing. If I say that propagation requires a medium, or it can propagate with no medium, that's a true dichotomy. These are logical axioms, right? So that's the point, that logic is
can be
useful.
proven, by the way. Logic can.
Right. It's like literally logical axioms. There's no other alternative, right? So to say that we can't discuss them, well, I mean, yikes, bro.
Yeah, no. And I'm all for discussing. That's why I'm here. Really enjoying it, though. Thanks, guys.
Oh, yeah. I tip my hat to you for that. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. I mean, we're glad you're here. And, you know, it's the kind of dangerous, reckless, thinking and statements that will kind of back somebody into a corner to try and prove their point, that they will be forced into making statements like electromagnetic waves or electromagnetic radiation doesn't exist, right? I mean, you're just painting yourself in a corner and stuff like that. Does anybody here really believe that with all the RF and EM, whether it's electromagnetic or magnetic, I would venture to say that most people don't even know the difference between magnetic and electromagnetic, right? Does anybody here know the difference between the two?
Well, they would say, yeah, so electromagnetic is actually the interaction within both the electric and magnetic oscillating fields together, right, as opposed to separate. But this also reifies the mainstream magnetic, and then to say that light's neither electric nor magnetic, you need to define magnetic, which can't even be defined within quantum, and you can't have light without electric. So it's just a huge pair, and you have to reify particles, because if there are no electromagnetic waves, then you're claiming everything is particles. And to claim the photon, you have to reify the electron. So it is just a bunch of pseudoscience. I mean, that's
agreed. I mean, I think there's a lot higher probability that things take form in the form of waves, much more so than particles. That's my personal opinion.
And what do you think about my analogy of how, like, yeah, it's waves, right? Like, but waves aren't things, but so there has to be a medium that's waving. Like, what do you think about the analogy of, like, say you have a lake and then you have an earthquake? Right, so like that whole thing shakes, and then it just illuminates. Or say, but it's a little different, right? Because it kind of ripples in the sense that we see illumination in a certain place, but the whole lake's already there, right? So like it's waving, disturbing, but it's not like physically moving. The lake's just already there, right? I mean, does that not click?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I'd add on to that is, or how you should have done it, you wouldn't have got it out anyway because you was over shouted, but the way how I would have got over that is, let's say we got some scuba gear, we went down underneath the water, and I'd done a Hadouken underneath the water, that would send a wave or a pressure wave over to you, and you'd feel that as a ping on your belly. And that's how I'd get around that. But can I put out a question, and anyone in the chat can answer as well?
Okay.
But there are 4 different understanding theories of how light interacted with another medium, aka refraction. So let's say light just going from air into glass. There were 4 theories put forward. Let me just put out the question. Which of the 4 theories better or at best describe the interaction of light going through a medium of higher density? We have Fermat's principle. We have Snell's law. We have marching soldiers theory. And we have Maxwell's equations. So just to go over them again, Fermat's principle, Snell's law, we have the marching soldiers theory, or Maxwell's equations. Put the answer in the chat now, quick, A, B, C, or D.
Well, I think part of the problem, Gleam, might be that they don't know. In fact, I don't know what a couple of those are. Fermat's principle or the marching soldiers? I'm not familiar with that.
Let me explain them. Them. Okay, Fermat's principle.
Yeah, you've heard the marching soldier before, Bob, but I've never heard it called that. But I know exactly what you're talking about, I believe, Gleam.
Yeah, so Fermat's principle. I got this from Fermilab, by the way, so I'm not educated on this, but this is how it was put across on how refraction has finally been discovered. But Fermat's principle is a wave theory of light. So Fermat believed in the ether, same as Huygens, same principle really, or a wave theory principle of light, where as it entered the glass, it would cause similar diffraction patterns to what you see in the double slit. Yeah, double slit. So at each point, let's say each individual wavefront that hits the glass, it then turns and goes to the correct angle, but it produces so many or infinite number of wavefronts, which I'll explain later. But either way, that's the wave theory. You have Snell's law, which doesn't really tell you if it's a wave or a particle. All it really tells you is the angle of incident of the light going into the medium versus the density of the medium would determine the angle of incident out of the medium.
But it does actually work very well, though.
Snell's, thank you. Either way, that's a very good comment. Take that as a hint. Either way, but the third one, marching soldiers. This is the particle theory of light, where if you can imagine, marching soldiers are thousands of photons all marching side by side. They start all off, and obviously there's millions following them. But
you could probably search it, Bob, if you want to show it.
There would be a angle change, obviously, due to the speed in the medium. Yeah, we all understand the refraction would slow down at certain points, la la la. Now, unfortunately, yeah, there is issues there, okay, with the particle version. Or you have Maxwellian, which is electromagnetic wave. It comes in, it hits as a wave, and it will leave as a wave in a similar way to how the Snell's law angles work.
Okay.
But the question was, which best describes how light operates in under basic refraction?
I put my answer in the chat.
Yeah, I'd have to say Snell's. That seems to make the most sense to me. But I that's something that I'm really going to think about and look into a little bit further, because honestly, food for thought.
Yeah, I would have said Snell's just based on my limited understanding of the variety at the moment.
I will say you're perfectly fine. Put it this way, I hate to say this name, but Rumpus said the same thing. Okay, now I will reveal the answer, because the actual chat out on YouTube's going haywire, and I can't pull up the thing, but it is Maxwell's equations. The reason being is the refractive index is now calculated off the Maxwell's equations. I will explain why, and this is one of the reasons why the particle marching soldiers does not work, where Maxwell's equation has an incidence of the wave coming in, and then it kind of polarizes and inverts on itself, and that gives the correct angle. Now that is the same angle, similar but Maxwell's is kind of more precise, but we're talking right at the 5-digit precision level.
The polar is it? Okay, I get it.
Yeah, but
I get it.
Snell's law produces the right angle, the correct angle roughly. Let's say the approximation is very accurate. However, it doesn't explain whether it's a particle that's doing that or an actual wave. Now, people, and obviously the mainstream science, have opted for Maxwell's equations as being the correct understanding of how light refracts through anything, because of that wavefront hitting the medium. The medium then determines the actual directionality, let's say, and obviously the density of that medium determines how slow it will go. And then there's questions, I don't want to get into it, on how it then regains its conservation of momentum and immediately jumps back to the speed of light, which I think, I mean, Ken Wheeler says that a lot, and there is their explanation, in as much as if you can imagine glass as a tiny crystal where you've got many roads to travel down, which are all jaggedy left and right and whatnot. The light is always traveling at the speed of light through the glass, but it's just traveling through a path which turns out to be a lot more. Therefore, the time, I don't want to get into that either way. But the reason why the particle model didn't work is that they assumed it with particles hitting at an angle. And what you would get, obviously, the beam of light, you would have, let's say, 10 particles straight away going straight out in the beam. As that hit the angle, the glass at an angle, one of the particles at the bottom would hit, then the second, then the third, fourth, fifth. And what would actually happen is you'd have a multitude of timings of the speed of light. Now, as it releases back out of the other side, there would need to be a breach in the speed of light on the outer particle, the outer photon, to catch up with the rest to come back out at the bottom, at the end, when it comes out of the medium. So that theory didn't work, the particle light. And how they even imagined it is, let's say we join up that first row of marching photons and we say, right, they're all holding hands. And as they hit the light, as they hit the glass, the end one spins around, so the first one is not entering the glass just yet. So they all enter in at the same time. Then what happens is that, again, a speed of light breach is required, because they're adjoined, they can't then disadjoin and all of a sudden the outer one catch up to the inner one. So the wave speed of light is the only way that they found, yes, this is the most precise, and that's what they base the refractive index on. A little bit of knowledge.
So my question is, when you've got a laser and you're shooting it through a fish tank with salt water at the bottom, that ray actually bends to the ground, right?
Yes.
So it's not like, so basically the longer you are looking through a consistent medium, can we say that that's always going to continue bending down? They make it sound like it enters a new medium and now it goes at the same speed throughout that medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's different in as much as you are correct. That is basic refraction. Yes, it will seek the denser medium. However, it is supposed to keep its speed retention at all time.
So it's going to say, right? So it's going to say, just basically it takes a longer path. So although the speed never changes, it takes longer to go out.
Exactly that. It's hitting more particles. There we go. So it's diffracting more, obviously, and scattering more, but it's hitting more particles. Therefore, it's taking a longer time to get through. Kind of like one of them coin machines that you put a coin in and it bounces off of all the pins that are in there. That's so instead of it having a free fall, it's bouncing off pins everywhere, so it slows it down.
So it keeps changing the incidence angle with the distance.
Yeah, but so we do have a problem though, right? So yeah, if you shoot it through glass, it slows down by 30%, and then it leaves and quote unquote speeds up, and then that would reach the conservation of energy. But they'll say that, like you said, the glass, because glass isn't like water; it's really seemingly going straight. There's little mini roads in there and all that stuff. The glass is much more perplexing to me than the water. But I see, can anyone that wants to say that light's a photon traveling answer this for me? How can you put a polarized lens in front of light and put another polarized lens in it, turn it perpendicular and block the light, and then add another polarized lens.
Oh, I wish you said that to them.
I know, another polarized lens, and then the light comes back. How's the photon all of a sudden come back after being blocked?
Yeah, that's a big anomaly to them. There's a name for that. The Venn paradox.
The quantum
right.
Venn paradox.
Yes.
Yeah, it's seriously. I wish you would. It was on the tip of my tongue when I'm listening to you getting cut off, and I'm just like, please just mention that. However, I will say, if you look back on the history of it, Aether took more, or the wave theory of light took a longer time to actually explain the polarization of light. However, the quantum Venn paradox is a little bit further because you have multiple filters. The polarization of a single photon, let's say, isn't too bad in particles, but exactly what you just said, echo, definitely 100%.
Yeah, and like the way I see it
how
all,
would it reappear?
exactly,
How does it come
blocked.
back?
It's blocked, but the way I see it all personally is like the glass is just an additional medium. So it slightly alters how you perceive the light. The light's already there. The light doesn't go through the glass. It doesn't go through the water. It's already there. So you added an additional medium of water and glass. So it slightly alters how we perceive the light. But the light's already there, right? And so I look at the same thing with the polarized lens. I would love to know how the photon goes through it, gets blocked, and then just goes through it by stacking another one. And there's many of them because they're now saying that they're not claiming light travels. So if it's a physical photon, then how does it not travel? Are there just photons everywhere? And if light can be instant, how could a physical photon be instant? So we got problems. I mean, the photon has so many problems we could talk till tomorrow, right? I mean, we must wonder why they hold on to it. There's got to be a reason, and that reason is relativity.
Can I just actually half inch that and just say Bob's putting on? I think it's Bob putting on the Bell's theorem here.
The
John
quantum
Bell
Venn paradox, is what I'm putting on.
Yeah, which is a demonstration of Bell's theorem. Bell's theorem is actually proving Einstein wrong on hidden variables, meaning that there's hidden variables happening in quantum mechanics for the likes of entanglement. But this Bell's theorem, oddly enough, just because of the topic of the show, John Bell was an advocate of the ether, of neo-Lorentzian relativity, of using an absolute reference frame because it was much easier, in his words, to teach as well as to use himself.
Nice. Oh, so am I still missing something with the double slit? So the photon, still a single photon creates an interference pattern, and then single photon knows we're observing it, and then the single photon can transcend time and alter events that have already happened. Or light is the background medium that's just already there. And every time you introduce an electronic reading with the detector, you're throwing a ripple in the medium, basically disturbing the pattern. So I don't understand. I just don't understand. How is one even considered viable? Are we really going to say that the photon is a god that is sentient and knows it's going to be observed before you know it and can transcend time? And one photon creates a wave pattern?
Well, photon derived from Lucifer, luciphotons, if you want. It's the light barrier.
Little packets.
And little packets, of course. Yeah. Everything is in symbology,
And like I said, that we have a Cherkanoff radiation, right? Which is like a nuclear reaction, if you will, nuclear energy. And then you have an immediate reaction when the light is seemingly way too fast within this water. Right, based on the constant speed of light in a vacuum, you apply it to the medium differential of water, and it's way too fast in Cherkanoff radiation. Light can't be instant if it's a physical photon, though, right? So now light can be instant if it's already there, and we're just quantifying how quickly we see what's already there. So that's why I say this is far from a scientific, definitive, black and white conversation. This is a logical discussion that needs, in-depth debate and understanding, and it's confounded physics for so long because they're holding on to presuppositions of relativity and heliocentrism. This is one of the number one things we should talk about as flat earthers. At least as I see it.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, Austin.
But I don't mind if somebody wants to go on a different path, right? Like if those guys say no, we don't believe in the ether because we don't think it's this, then go and research other things.
Yeah, but do not, chastise people for looking into it and tell them how much of a moron they are and how do your balls taste. I mean, it's just juvenile, it's childish, and we don't play that game. We're not going to ever play that game. This is a show about serious inquiry, and I think there are some viewpoints that are just stupid. I think, like electromagnetic waves don't exist, but I will still discuss it. But and I will never ever tell anybody that they shouldn't look into it, because we don't know everything. We're still learning, and not only that, we are already up against the establishment, which the best knowledge that we can glean away from the establishment is what they are trying to deter us from, right? In other words, if they say, no, don't look into the ether, that's been debunked, all that stuff, there's a good chance that the ether is very real, very viable. And not to mention the fact that there is technology in use based on the ether that has no other explanation. And I still defy anybody to give me an explanation as to how that works without the ether. I'd love to hear it. So I will remain open in that sense. And I think that's how everybody should be. But, when you start dictating to people what they can and cannot do, you have crossed the line. Simple as that.
Also, what do you think about, they say one of the main proofs for the photon is the photoelectric effect, which reifies the electron. And it says that, my presentation just got unrebutted, right? But it says that a photon hits an atom, exchanges its energy to an orbital electron, physically dislodges it, transfers the rest of its energy to the free electron, and then transforms into a photoelectron. Right? And that requires the reification of the electron. And when you look into that, there's 70 different paradoxes with the electron. Right? It's matter, but it has no size because it's a point particle. And we can't find it, but this is how we think we can find it with math. And it's actually just a cloud of density and all this other nonsense. And it's 100 million times smaller. And we know it has matter, but we can't detect it as matter or size. We just get a charge and then use charge to mass ratio, assuming that it's matter. And then you have to have this electron to substantiate your claims with a photon, which is what Einstein won his Nobel Prize for, the photoelectric effect interpretation. So it's this is clearly one side is atomism, materialism, heliocentrism, relativity, right? The other side is can't go there because heliocentrism doesn't work with it. So I don't know. I encourage people to. I don't know everything. I'm not claiming I have it all figured out. I'm just encourage people to research it, right? Because there's a lot of information here, and it seems like we've been misguided for obvious reasons, deterred away from learning about this. And so the last thing you should do is let someone else tell you not to. Just go research it like you did with everything in your path of truth, and constantly learn and see if you can put the pieces together.
Exactly. Well said. All right. Cool. Well, this has been, a really enlightening show, I think, really amazing. I do want to give a couple of shout outs really quick to the Rockman side of the chat that has given us some really great tips. So I'm going to read those off really quick, and then we'll kind of start getting ready to wrap it up here. But thank you, James Ritchie, very much, very generous tip. Holy cow. Welcome back. Did you ever have the conversation with Sergio Aguero? I don't know. Did you, Hero? Hello, Hero.
He's gone. And
he's gone.
How dare you?
Okay. Well, all right. And we'll just continue on then. We'll try and get that answer back to you, James Ritchie. Ryan, thank you so much for the generous tip. Wow. You guys are just unbelievable. Lori Glenn, thank you so much for the tip. You're awesome. Robert Zafaris is always the big spender in the tip department. We thank you so much for that. Fishhead Montana, thank you so much for that. And Jezbo, thank you for the tip in Rockman. We appreciate it. So, all right, guys. So I think we got about 20 minutes left, and I think I want to kind of go around for one last thing for any final thoughts on, what, you guys think about the ether, or any potential directions we could, investigate into, or what you might recommend for people to look into to discover more about the luminiferous ether. I can personally say that there are mountains of evidence out there, mountains of documentation by the finest minds in scientific history and engineering history, would be an understatement. I mean, it's everywhere. It is, there's every possible angle you could take on it. And I would encourage you to also look at the con side of it, as well as the pro side. And as always, make up your own mind, because, it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It really matters what you think and, what you can get behind. And we support that 100%. So let's go ahead and start out, I guess, with you, Zach. And do you want to have any summations, anything you're doing, or any final words on the luminiferous ether?
Yeah. Like when you hear people like Ken Wheeler speak, even Austin speak. When I first started and found Ken Wheeler, I got rid of his channel a few different times because I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And he didn't explain what those words meant in any of his videos, really. He explained them using other really big words, So
Thank
I
God
went
for
to
Fractal Woman, right?
Well, yeah, her too. She's great. But really, Walter Lewin of MIT. All his classes from 2012, I believe, are free here on YouTube. 802 Electricity and Magnetism. Just the first 5-6 videos. If you can watch them a few times. I actually went through all those videos and took out all of the math, because he's giving a lecture at MIT to a class. So he's, writing all these big giant equations up there. I took all that out and I called it nothing but the gravy. Nothing but when he's explaining how things work and then showing it with demonstrations. This is the man who got me excited about electricity and wanting to learn all this stuff. And I did. I learned a lot from him. It took me a couple times watching it. I didn't watch it once and get it, but just watch him a few times and all this stuff will start making a lot more sense. But yeah, you need that base, I think, before you start going and researching like Heaviside, and because they all speak like Ken Wheeler. You go and read their books and it's not made for children. So you really need a base foundation in your vocabulary. It's like learning a new language almost. You need to have these certain words and what they mean. And yeah, it's something that, you can't just be told one time and get it. It's really something you have to, that's why Walter Lewin's great. He shows demonstrations. But that's where I would start if I were you, if you really wanted to. And like I said, on my channel, it's a couple years back. It should be in my Fun with Electricity playlist, but it's called Nothing But the Gravy. And I took out all the big equations and all the math and just made it the good stuff. But that's where I would start.
Excellent. Yes, and another person we both mentioned, Fractal Woman. You're on YouTube. I call her my go-to source for Ken Wheeler translations. And, guys, and I've said this before about Ken Wheeler. The guy he's an undisputable certified genius. I mean, he speaks multiple languages. He translates ancient languages, multiple languages. He is one of the foremost experts on magnetism that exists in today's world. And a lot of people say, he's just jerking flat Earth's chain. And I get that. I totally see that. I mean, he came on our show and he made statements like, yes, I've always said that you have to be on the dielectric inertial plane. That's the only place capable of supporting life. I mean, he has made so many pro-flat Earth statements that I think he really does know. But I also think that he jerks our chain, so to speak, as to maintain some level of credibility with the rest of his audience who, thinks very lowly of flat Earth and its philosophy. So I think it's a little hypocritical and I think it's a little two-faced, but it is what it is. And that doesn't take away from who he is and what he knows and what he can contribute to, part of the argument that we're making. So there you have it. All right, so Kyle, let's go ahead and swing over to you. What would you have any final words on the Aether or anything coming up for you?
I think it'd be really nice to make like a 5-minute summary video on this topic so we can kind of get people up to date, because I feel like we're still using a lot of really big terms and a lot of just titles for things that would be really nice to just simplify, get really simple for.
I agree, because I don't want to be accused of using word salad. I want people to actually understand what we're saying. That's important. It is.
Yeah,
because
like
otherwise you're just going, what?
So simple that a child can understand it. And so if I go explain to my daughter the Michelson-Morley experiment, she's not gonna have any clue what I'm talking about. So I would like to go get like a 5-minute video and or kind of put one together and kind of summarize everything like that. I think that'd be really nice.
Well, if you can do that, I wholeheartedly support it. But there are some things that require a little bit of investment, your time and brain. So, and I think this is one of them. So I don't think there's an easy solution or easy explanation. But what we will do is we will continue to break it down and try and elaborate as we go along, right? And as always, you can either take it or you can leave it, and that's the way it should be. So there you have it. So, all right. So cool. So, Iro, are you back with us yet?
Yeah. I was all the show here, but for me it's a really fascinating topic, and in fact I have prepared a few things, but it's a little hard to me to explain. One of the colleagues that we have in our private chat in WhatsApp it's a guy who wrote a few articles, and he works for physical theorist, theoretical physicist is that profession. And he become almost 100% flat earther. He's still in the middle, but after a long career working on that, he became a shaman. In terms of that, he started using and he gives lectures about the healing process. Using the concept of a field of knowledge and interaction, and in terms of a spiritual thing, And the guy, he still have a really super nice lecture that I trying to subtitle, at least with the automatic tool from YouTube, because it's a very, very nice presentation give in private college. And the title is, "It's the Same, the Vacuum, Nothing." In terms, I just translate literally, maybe in English you need to say another way, but he talks about how mainstream science transformed the word vacuum into nothing. And when they refer to vacuum in the old days, they refer in the sense that maybe today we can talk about the quantum vacuum, because they need to accept that there is not exist a vacuum in terms of nothing, in terms of the emptiness. There is something, and in fact, I have a lot of video that I use to present in some of my conference, that there is a guy, for example, from CERN talking about that. Well, in science, we don't understand very well vacuum. If you turn off the light, and this is the exactly words that this physicist use. If you turn off the light, you take out all the furniture, you empty completely the room, well, we still have something there. And that something, you can make it vibrate. And if you make it vibrate, well, blah, 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 blah. So there is nothing in the real life, at least for me. And this guy talk and give a lecture and show how Albert Einstein at the beginning say that the ether exists. Then he said, no, the ether doesn't exist, to prove his general theory of relativity, and he talks about and exposes about Maxwell and about Faraday and blah blah blah. And at the end of the presentation, he gives some examples about quantum mechanics with an analogy of a water, and he concludes that it must be exist an ether for the quantum mechanics works. In fact, he said, remember that we have a precision of 11 numbers in terms of our math, and the only way that precision and that accuracy works is because it must be a medium, and we're gonna call that medium ether. So I'm gonna try to translate, but it's a really fascinating topic. Besides that, I don't approve the behavior of Nathan Oakley. I don't understand why he has so much hate inside his blood. I mean, it's an asshole. You cannot treat people like that. It doesn't matter if it's a Glober or if it's a flat earther or if it's a Republican or Democrat, whatever. You cannot live with that, because if you understand quantum mechanics, no, but if you understand Germanic medicine, that is not for free, man. It's gonna come the time when you're going to be you need to take address of that in your blood, So my advice is take it easy.
I always look at it and I say, what if everybody
you know?
acted like that, right? You would hope that we would pick somebody out and say, oh, if everybody acted like that, would be a pretty cool world. Well, it wouldn't be very cool if everyone was acting like that.
Yeah. So beside that, I'm gonna try to share with the English community our Flat Earth conference in the 10th of September. So maybe the next weekend is gonna be a little difficult to me to be in the show, but I'm gonna try to share some of the that adventure. We have 500 people in Barcelona inside of a public shopping. So walking around with t-shirts from Flat Earth and trying to engage people, and it's gonna be really fun. So if there is some Flat Earther around it, listen to this, you can come to our conference.
Awesome. Yeah, I wish I was there. I would love to go to a conference in Europe. That'd be awesome. So very cool. Okay, Earl, well, thank you very much for that. That was very well said, and I appreciate your wisdom on that. So let's move around to Gleam. And Gleam, you came in a little bit late, but you had a lot to add to this conversation, and I'm so grateful that you were able to make it, and we were able to hook up today. But what would you have to say as far as any final words for anybody, anything to look into that you would recommend, or your final thoughts on it?
Yeah, 100%. I would dig a massive signpost into the word 0 point energy. That is exactly it kind of marries up everything Whitsitt's been saying and describing. Everything that Whitsitt was describing there is what's known as a perturbative theory. It's one of those theories, and it's basically that things are not particles; they're excitations in the medium perturbating the medium. And that is quantum field theory. That is how we understand particles in the current standard model. Now, this 0 point energy is the theory behind the quantum background, which Uru was just discussing there. And it's exactly that. It's needed to be lending energy from it in order to explain interactions or certain particle interactions where they're receiving more energy than what they should be. And excess energy that they can't describe with the current model, put it that way. So I'd point you to 0 point energy. Now, in as much as you'll see quotes in there by Dennis Sciama. Dennis Sciama was actually Stephen Hawking's professor, and he literally says this 0 point energy, these fluctuating fields, seem to be a reintroduction of ether into physics. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, yeah, Stephen Hawking's professor is saying this, then let's look into it more, and you find out there's likes of Leon Lederman. He's the guy that wrote, you may have heard of it in the background, but a book called The God Particle, and it was about the Higgs boson and whatnot. In the back of his book, in his appendix, he says to describe what the ether is, I'll read it word for word. The ether, invented by Isaac Newton, reinvented by James Clerk Maxwell. This is the stuff that fills up empty space of the universe. Discredited and discarded by Einstein, the ether is now making a Nixonian comeback. It's really the vacuum, but burdened by theoretical ghostly particles. Now, I got shouted at. I was just watching FED, but I got shouted at by QE. Number one, he actually blocked me completely from his channel because I put up multiple papers referencing 0-point energy as the rename of ether. And there are multiple evidences for its existence, which is the likes of Lamb shift, the likes of the magnetic moment of the muon and electron. There's multiple Casimir effect, which is two uncharged plates showing attractive force, where you can't account for it just by the standard components in a vacuum. But 0-point energy is the kind of replacement for ether. That is the reintroduction of ether in quantum mechanics, and it's a perturbative theory where you're lending energy from this. And how they've disguised it, Feynman specifically, he's basically said that these are virtual particles, and they get a reverse or inverse charge. So, for example, every particle, an electron, has a opposite antimatter particle or antiparticle, which is a positron, a positive electron. And how Feynman sees it is a natural electron, but it's going back in time. How Paul Dirac saw it is that no, they are two separate things, but one's lending energy from the background Dirac C, which is, again is the ether. And either way, those are the things you should look at. The big signpost is 0-point energy. The wiki page alone will take you further straight away into that.
So if they're coming back and they're trying to make a reintroduction of the ether, I think it would be very interesting to see how exactly they're going to reintegrate the results of the Michelson-Morley experiment into that newfound existence of the ether, right? Because that is the whole reason why the whole obfuscation, they say that Michelson-Morley was basically a failure in detecting the ether. And that isn't what it was about at all. It was a failure in detecting the Earth's motion through the ether, right?
Exactly.
So how are they going to change that? That's what I want to know.
It was exactly that. If you see the paper title, the paper's got nothing to do with the existence of ether. Doesn't conclude anything to do with ether. It just basically says Lorentz's theory, which is
ridiculous.
Well, it was to start with. It was similar to Newton's theory, where it was absolute action at a distance. So you had an absolute frame where ether stood still, and we all floated through it, and it wasn't dynamic. It wasn't relativistic. And either way, that points onto that. But I've got to chuck in just one thing, just because QE and them lot silence my science. So even though it's globe earth science, it's the likes of Paul Dirac, the likes of Leon Lederman, Robert Locklin, all Nobel Prize winners. And at that level, they're all literally saying, yeah, we're reintroducing ether with the quantum background. The quantum vacuum is exactly what we thought as the luminiferous ether. So because he's deleted me, they come from the point of view, and I've heard this real big mistake of theirs, which they say, oh, so the photon is supposed to be an electromagnetic wave, but it doesn't react to electric, it doesn't react to magnetic field, and it doesn't wave if it's just one photon. And as Witsit pointed out, obviously, there is still a diffraction pattern, albeit that it's the very first one could go slightly to the left, and therefore it's still showing one. So there is no wave pattern on the back because you've only got one photon. So you're both kind of correct, but bullhorns either way. But the core thing is two effects to look up, which are well known. One is Stark effect, and one is the Zeeman effect. And these two effects are massive in the likes of spectral analysis of atomic lines spectra, of what it's absorbing, what frequency of light it's absorbing, and what it's emitting, transmitting, and that was really Paul Dirac's core explanations that he went into the maths of. But essentially it was Zeeman and Stark that discovered that spectral lines become visible when you apply a magnetic field or a electric field to a particular surface. So where the photoelectro effect's firing photons at the surface, if you charge that surface, difference happens, or absorption lines become clearer, and you can actually see them, physically see what colors are being blocked and what are being emitted and what are being reflected. So it's the Stark effect and the Zeeman effect are both evidence that there is an interaction between the photon and light, light and an electric field or magnetic field. So that's completely wrong. It's completely wrong to say it. Put it this way. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows, but the whole of Special Relativity's 1905 paper is Einstein. 90% of that paper is Einstein reverse engineering Maxwell's equations for mass, as opposed for electric and magnetism. He was doing it for mass. And that is essentially the birth of special relativity, is Maxwellian equations for mass, as opposed to an electric charge or magnetic force.
And you know, it's amazing because all of these so-called proofs, and the mainstream never misses a beat to say, oh, this proves Einstein's special relativity. This proves relativity. They're always claiming that, but they're doing it based on complete Narnian fairy tales, right? Which nobody can verify for themselves at all. So really, there is no proof for anything that Einstein ever did, as far as I'm concerned. And if there is, it's very far and few between. But there are other aspects of globe Earth physics that are valid, maybe not in their entirety in the way that we would look at them. But go ahead, Zach.
He did make a really nice blouse, Bob. You can't.
Yeah, he did.
You can't say he didn't do anything. Yeah, his one patent that had anything that was ever really used was his blouse.
Yep.
Yeah, he modified that refrigerator. Perfect. Love that.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so let's go ahead and move around to Austin. And Austin, you've been very vocal on this, and I couldn't agree with you more. When somebody has to resort to fundy muting you and talking over you and calling you names and stuff like that, that means they've already lost the argument right there. It's over. And I think anybody that watches that can see that you can't. And of course, they do this with the Globers too, and they wonder why the Globers, have a problem with it. There is no such thing as a fair discussion, on that type of platform, and to do it to other flat earthers is even more reprehensible, I think. But final words on the Aether. I mean, you and I are very closely in alignment on our beliefs and what the Aether is. And so, what do you have for final words, sir?
Yeah. So sorry if I got a little amped up throughout the show, but yeah, like in general, the sentiment's simple. I'm not claiming I know everything, but I am not going to stop asking questions or investigating it. I think Gleam really laid out a lot of the good points that people want to avoid, like background radiation, background energy. And then the conundrum that quantum has with all kinds of virtual nonsense. And so basically the critique that I've gotten is that I'm proposing a false dichotomy between atomism and ether, but I don't see it that way. Every proposed theory invokes particles, or the ether does not. And even QFT, quantum field theory, as Gleam detailed, they're crawling their way back to the ether because they just literally can't avoid it. They can't avoid it. They have to adopt an etheric type framework It's still slightly different. There are different variations, of course, but as they claim that these are fields that sustain themselves within themselves and still typically comprised of particles, and then, like he said, they use it loosely interchangeably with excitations, and then they have particles that go back in time or particles that create like their little reverse reciprocated twin. So anyway, I guess the point is that the confinement of atomism, materialism, relativistic application has resulted in a bunch of nonsense, and the double slit elucidates the absurdity quite well. I think that we should go back to the fatherheads of electrical field theory, at least to inform ourselves. I want to read kind of what Tesla said. Tesla said, "We are now confident that electric and magnetic phenomena are attributable to ether, and we are perhaps justified in saying that the effects of static electricity are effects of ether under strain, and those of dynamic electricity and electromagnetism effects of ether in motion." Again, that's Tesla, and this I'm not appealing to his authority, but he certainly was a genius, and I think that maybe something more akin to what he was proposing may be the proper framework. As we detailed, certain observations kind of required them to throw the ether out because it wasn't particularly consistent with the globe spinning and the idea of the Earth being a ball revolving around in space. I don't really see how they're going to integrate QFT with Michelson-Morley and Michelson-Gale. Like I said, they claim that the fields sustain themselves, and then you ask them to define fields. This is QFT reluctantly absorbing ether. That is, you ask them to define field, they define it as math. They don't offer a definition for field. They don't offer a definition for energy, as they say the ability or capacity to do work, which is what something does, not what something is. If I ask you to define a human, and you say humans breathe oxygen, I'm like, cool story, bro, but what's a human? And we want to know what magnetism is and what electricity is, and it seems like the ether offers a viable framework for all these things, and not invoking the sentience of Dragon Ball Z, Spirit Bomb, particles that are God, and sentient and transcend time, and blah, blah, blah. So long story short, there does seem to be a logical framework that is not brand new, and it seems viable, and it is a background medium, an energetic background medium that sustains electromagnetic phenomena, and it is an etheric realm, some call it counter space, and it's pure potential, and it's got this endless source of energy, and then that energy interacts with the physical world as it becomes manifest, typically in motion, and it's mechanical and has tenuity beyond comprehension, as Tesla would say, and these are things that seem crazy or hard to understand at first because we're suffering from aphasia, the inability to properly express with speech because of all the misdefined terms we've been indoctrinated with. So we need to redefine and relearn things. For example, there's no such thing as magnetic attraction, right? Or things just accelerate to the null pressure point between the two magnets, and everything's magnetic, just as coherent or incoherent, et cetera, et cetera. So not to digress too much, but I just think it's important that we begin to kind of re-inform ourselves and look into it, and just look at the viability of both of the frameworks. And in summary, the biggest part here is that quantum mechanics, this is my assessment, neither quantum mechanics nor ether are science when you apply the rigid dogmatic application of natural science, being the very strict script of physical manipulation of an independent variable to verify the cause and effect relationship. Of course, the etymology of science is to know, and we continue to pursue things with demonstrations and observations, even if we don't scientifically prove things. You cannot quantify the immaterial. You cannot scientifically manipulate and vary the immaterial. But if the immaterial exists, it doesn't just stop existing because you cannot do those things, because you cannot count them. Little bean counters trying to dictate reality seems irrelevant to anyone truly pursuing what's going on. And overall, this is a philosophical discussion. It should be respectful. It should be an intellectual exchange. As you see, we had a huge exchange of information on here today, where we had all kinds of thought-provoking conversations. A lot of people were pointed to more information they could go learn and go research. And this is what it should be. And this is what Flat Earth is, or at least in theory should be, where we kind of broke out of this cult of indoctrination that we were brainwashed with at a young age. And the whole idea is that we can think for ourselves and diligently research. And anybody attempting to self-elect themselves the cult leaders of Flat Earth, you might as well just ignore them, as that is beyond deluded. And like I said, it's very interesting. It's once you start to pull back the curtain, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. All the stories they have is nonsense pseudoscience with conundrums and paradoxes and dualities which cannot exist in nature. and just conundrum after conundrum, and a million different superpower particles in different positions at the same time, drowning in math reifications and materialism. And so these are potentially going to unlock secrets such as energy. What is energy? How can we attain energy? How can we attain energy without loss? How can we understand magnetism? How can we understand the world we're in? There's a vortex in the ether. What's in the center of the surface of the Earth? Is this tied with the mechanism of movement in the sky? Is this explaining phenomena like the sun analemma and the gyroscope drift and the pendulum drift, et cetera, the centrifugal and Coriolis translation of motion from the exterior of the system as the sky moves, just like Aries failure showed us that the ether's moving around us. So the whole thing is we woke up to that we've clearly been misled about the nature of where we live. And although we may not know exactly what it is, it's pretty clearly not what they said it is. We should keep pursuing as much as we can regarding knowledge about where we live. And we should be respectful to one another and agree to disagree and never try to like intimidate other people via like 5-year-old tactics of personal ad homs and funding muting and straw manning and all this nonsense. So that's basically my conclusion is just you guys have seen it. I'll continue to discuss it here and there, but I don't really want to feed into the low vibrational nonsense anymore. I think we sufficiently addressed it here.
No, we're done with them. We're done with that.
yeah, it's kind of
on
how
their
I feel.
own.
Yep. So that's how I feel about it too. I think we did good here. I'd love to have people like Glean, if you ever want to come on or stuff like that. We can keep talking about thought-provoking stuff and just kind of elevate and learn and continue to explore. And I think that's the move. As to my content, I'll be continuing to stream. I think I'm going to stream like at least 5 days a week, and I have a bunch of different types of shows that I'll be doing scheduled. So a lot of content coming, should be cool. And yeah, great show. Enjoyed it. And nice kicking. I'm glad we did it.
All right, beautiful. Well said too, by the way, and thank you for that, and all the research that you put into it. You are a great asset to this team, and I know I appreciate you, and I know everybody else on this panel does too. So, all right. So, last but certainly not least, Jeran. I know this has had your head spinning for years now, as you've watched me go back and forth with people on it, and I think you're starting to see the light in a lot of ways, but so what are your final thoughts on this?
I don't know if I've been off on this one as much. I mean, I've never, there's no reason to say, what do they say? Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, right? So for me, the ether is something that I don't think we completely understand. And so as far as it not being science, that might be true. But I think that that's what they measured with Michelson-Morley. I think that that's kind of ironed out. And that's the reason that they had to, get relativity going, because they realized the implications of what that test was showing. So I leave things open, though. I don't think it's good to take a position strong one way or the other, because then you have a hard time seeing the other side. So it's easier to kind of ride the middle. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Tonight at 6:00 on Chris Crumb's channel, I'll be there. We're going to be going to, we're going to write a parody with the audience for the first time ever. Well, it's probably not the first time. I'm sure somebody's done it in the past, but first time for us. We're going to basically get the audience to write it with us. We're going to be doing Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, but Conspiracy Minded. So that'll be fun, 6 p.m. tonight. And I'll drop the link right after this in both the chats. And then it will be on my t.me/Jeranism show if you want to sign up for notifications. And I believe that's it. Can I show myself real quick?
Absolutely.
Love it. All right, so I'm just going to show this. This is my store, which is shop.jeranism.com. And when you go there, if you go to the bottom here, you'll see that I've got this ebooks. Oh, you can't see it on the screen there. Well, down here, the third item, or the third row, is a USB 3.0 drive that has all of my ebooks on it. So let me show you this real quick. So, okay, so this is my files here. But I've been spending days going through and organizing this all by category. You'll see, I mean, if you go to like Flat Earth, you're going to get all these different books. So there's the Alex Gleason. There's lots of stuff on Albert Einstein. There's Albert in Wonderland. There's Albert the Earth Mover, written by Sungenis. I also have a folder up here talking about Worth the Price, because just these books here, this is your 200 mile per gallon carburetor with water, the 666 Black Sun book, lots of Mason stuff. Got like the Francis Bacon Discovery of Miracles. Here's a Freemason Bible, which is really tough to get. And My computer's taking a little slow nap here. Hello, wake up. There, it'll come up. So that's the Freemason Bible, all and it's complete. And then you've got, hello, it's taking forever. There we go. So tons of pages on that. That's, you can just drag us down here. And you've also got all kinds of stuff. This is the FBI file on Nikola Tesla. So again, page after page after page. So this is all my research that I've kind of had. Here's a book called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. Here's the collected writings of Jack Parsons. So if you wanted to read the stuff that he wrote about, here's the Book of the Ancient and Accepted Rites of the Scottish Rite. You've got Hidden Messages by Dr. Emoto. So if you want to read about water. So again, this is just one folder. You'll see I've also got aliens, UFOs, Americas, ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, Apocrypha. The Christianity section is ridiculous. That's huge. Just all Christian books, Bibles, things like that. Here's conspiracies. So all kinds of stuff in here. So anyway, for anybody who likes to read, this is a excellent item. It helps me out. So go to the store if you're interested in that, shop.jeranism.com. Oh, and on that store, you can actually shop if you do pick an item. Let's say this one. And you go to buy now. You can pay with cryptocurrency. You can pay with Binance Pay, credit card, debit card, Cash App. So all the options are there. Check it out. That's shop.jeranism.com. Thanks.
All right. Beautiful. And okay. So, and of course, last but not least, and I want to thank you, Keith, so much for being here. I think very highly of you. I respect you. I think that you have a good head on your shoulders. I do think there are a lot of things that you may not understand as far as, areas that I spent my entire career in, 40 years as an electrical engineer. And so you have some things to learn, but you are very diligent in your studies. And I admire that. I really do. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on here and saying what you believe. And we respect that. We really do. Nobody thinks any less of you for it. I totally respect you for it. And, you're going to always be okay in my book for that, buddy. So as our guest of honor, I will definitely let you have the final word, pro or con. Take it away, sir.
I just want to say thank you for having me on. Because it doesn't help fighting against each other. It's all work to get where we have to go. And I mean,
yes.
I'm definitely going to look into a few more things that I did listen tonight. So I'll definitely look at that.
And we are available for questions from you. We will talk to you.
Yeah. Well, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy
Beautiful.
it. Definitely, okay. I'd like to come on again sometime. It'd be great.
Absolutely. This is a conversation that is ongoing because the learning never stops. We all know that. And I have kind of made it a point to collect some of the best and most knowledgeable and most logical thinkers, the most educated, not necessarily educated, but just the best thinkers in the community. And that's how I like to have on the show. And, I think that when we have a community like that and we all share our knowledge, that collectively we're going to knock the ball out of the park completely. So there you have it.
What ball?
Yeah, what ball? Right. So anyway, that's it for me. I'm definitely going to be watching Jeran's show tonight for sure. And I was going to go through and read the super chats on YouTube. I know there were only a few of them, but my YouTube is making me re-authenticate in order to get into the finance section where I can find that. What a pain in the butt. I can't believe how much of a pain YouTube is sometimes.
For your security.
Yes, for my security, for my protection.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're broadcasting on it now, but no. I have to re-authenticate and do all my stuff so I can read my super chats, but whatever. So thank you all the people that super chatted, and Rockfin, you guys are rock stars. We had quite a turnout on Rockfin today, and it's much appreciated, guys. We appreciate you very much, and we will catch you on the next show. So until then, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your eyes, because there's truth inside. Open your mind, because there's truth inside. Boy, am I losing it.
Open your eyes too, though.
Yeah, and your eyes, yes. All right, peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Oh,
I got to play.
Cheers, guys.
Me, I'm in charge here. My bad.
Yep, you're in charge.